What happened yesterday on Gorman was unprovoked genocide.
This is the final installment of Stop Genocide. Where are all the fighters who swore they would never let Palestine fall? Where are all the anti-Zionists? Why do we still act like nonviolence works? Nonviolence has killed Palestine. I'm going to play for everyone a podcast. Here and Now is Dr. Weisfeld's podcast. The Here and Now features Steve's struggle from the original Black Panther Party of the 1960s and 1970s. Bundism is Jewish Pantherism. To claim otherwise is counter-revolutionary.
So, hey, Steve is here. Yeah, man.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Oh. So what is it that's happening with the Americans, in terms of, support, popular support for President de Trump, as I call him, as his real name, as he signs his signature, with an H at the end. Has his support really gone down to 20%, as I've heard?
Well, that's a good question. So there have the University of Massachusetts poll. It was approval rating was 38%, and that was four days ago. So you can say 3.8 out of 10.
Oh, 38%. Whoa.
Okay, it's pretty low.
Yeah, it's pretty low, but it's still pretty high. Even Hitler, when he took power, when he became the chancellor appointed by the president, Hindenburg, he only had 35. Well, I think he had 42%, popular support at that time. And then for the first election, they only had 35%, although they were the largest political party because of the failure of the communists and the socialists to form a united front. So
let's see.
So Trump could still get away with a lot, like with 38% support. Wow.
Let's see. Let's see here. Yeah, it's for around 50% dislike, 12% neutral, and 35% like. That's kind of where it is right now.
35%, same percent as the Nazis. Wow, it gives me a chill. I mean, it may sound low to you, but to me, it sounds like they would still have enough, to take over and declare martial law and cancel the upcoming election, that sort of thing, just like Zelensky did in Ukraine.
Well, these are all pretty recent. Like these are within the last week. These are not old polls. These are unfavorable 55, unfavorable 53, unfavorable 51, unfavorable 52, unfavorable 50, unfavorable 56, unfavorable 54, unfavorable 47, unfavorable 59, let me see, 54, 49. So say we did an average, which we could do it, just take a minute to do it. It looks like the median unfavorable is around 53.
Those are the various states?
Good question. The polls are from The Economist, Silver Bulletin, New York Times, Rasmussen, Real Clear Politics, Morning Consult, Reuters, Navigator Research, Emerson Column, Gallup, and Quinnipiac University. So those are the 10 schools or agencies, and this is from USA Today. This is from the USA Today newspaper on August 4th. So this is very, very recent.
That's very definitive. Yeah. Okay. So but even though there's such opposition, it doesn't mean much. When the power has 35% base of support, they will use that to crush the majority of the people who are opposed to them.
Well, it depends on though what the majority does. Because it's in essence, 55% should be able to crush 35%. But how will the 55% do that? That's what we're seeing to have interest in the United States right now. The way the government is structured, there can't be a call for new elections. There can't be any call for anything politically until next year when they have what they call the midterm elections.
Hmm.
So, well, this is just 20, yeah, next year. So politically, let's say maybe let's say in a governor's race, you can have a recall, a mayor's race, maybe at some lower level of government, that 55% could organize to oust a Trump ally in the state house or maybe the state legislature, as far as that way of getting rid of somebody. Um, they can have demonstrations, or they can do that kind of thing. But at the national level, at least if you're looking at it governmentally, politically, they have to grow. They have to bide their time and build their forces. So next year, when they have the congressional races, they oust as many Republicans as possible.
Okay.
That's unless they can, unless that majority of people demand, say we basically want them out, and we're going to start a movement to get them out
Hmm.
by any means necessary.
Yes. Okay, but the way the Nazis did it in Germany is that they had 35% support. Okay, same thing as Trump right now. The opposition had a majority. However, the opposition was divided into the socialists and the communist parties, which each had, about 25%. Okay, so, between the two of them, they had a majority, but they were divided and they refused to form a united front because they were each in competition with each other. And each one
Well,
thought that they were going to replace the Nazi regime after it, fails. So they,
well,
you
here, but
know,
here politically,
opened
I'm
the
not.
door, to Nazis, because they didn't, form, like a majority.
But here, the opposition here,
Yes.
the opposition here is pretty much going to be Democratic Party. Even the socialists would mostly be DSA, Democratic Social America.
Hmm.
That's it, and they're going to vote Democratic.
Hmm.
So
So the game is still within the Democratic Party,
yeah,
even
yeah,
though,
oh yeah. It's and unfortunately, that's where the game's going to be for a little while.
mhm,
There are people who I know who work for a Labor Party who want to have a Workers' Party. However, the Democratic Party can call their people out through different front groups like Indivisible or No King's Day or whatever, and they come out.
mhm,
So if the DSA can do that when they do it through a Democratic Party, but
mhm.
doing it on their own, they can't get that kind of turnout.
Yeah, yeah,
I think for people to ignore that is just stupid. I'm not talking about you. The people say, "Well, we got to organize against the Democrats." Okay, well, that will work up to election day. Election day, they're not going to vote for your party. They're going to vote for the Democratic Party right now in the United States. So I think it is possible to vote them out, to vote out to have it now. Remember that everybody doesn't vote too.
yeah.
People don't always. So you got to have a combination of voting and strikes and confrontation. Like a couple days ago, this real reactionary guy from Iowa. There was a town hall meeting. This is where they've gotten kind of nasty. The town hall meetings have gotten very nasty because these are mostly whites, middle class workers coming to a meeting to talk to their representatives.
Mhm,
And they were asking, why can't we have Medicare for all healthcare problem. And the guy decided to start slandering the teenagers. Oh, it's a lazy 28-year-old. This they show what they're about when they open their mouths. And this is how they may lose by showing such disrespect for the population. All the population wants is a healthcare system. Everybody else has one. Why can't we have one? I mean, that's all we were, and they want to defame. Oh, you're lazy, and see, they always go back to these certain tropes: laziness, welfare queen, cheater on public. Some kind of just defamation of the person asking the question, and this may cause them to lose because people understand why. Why do you want to invade Canada? Why do you want to bomb Iran? Why do you want to do this with all the money? And this is what MAGA is supposedly saying. So MAGA has to split. And and there's some real racist people in MAGA. Really bad, really terrible people, terrible views in MAGA. If MAGA can split, then their whole move is over. Then Trump is over with. Well, see, remember too, Abraham, Trump will leave in 3 years. He cannot be reelected. So the thing is, what's going to happen then? Are the Republican allies going to try and run? Yes, of course they're going to try and run. And will MAGA support them? And will those who oppose Trump not vote? Because if it's about voting, and also they're redrawing the districts in states, the Republicans, so they can get more members in like the legislature. So they're really trying to do what they can to stay in power
Yeah.
and to attack those who are in their way. We'll see what happens.
I'm concerned, very concerned and worried about, these elections, because, they have the power. They can manipulate the elections. They can change, the criteria for voting. If you don't have a certain identity card, they're going to say you can't vote or something like that. Then, the opposition, to King Trump there is split. So they're not necessarily going to be willing to vote, for Democratic candidates. And thirdly, the MAGA people are going to vote, for the Republicans in any case. The only sort of, a thing that would, upset the Republican Party from forming a united front is if the Musk, faction splits from the Republicans and sets up their independent party, right away rather than later on. Then that would split the Republican vote and they would lose.
That's my question. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happened with Elon Musk's party right now. Is he doing anything, or what's going on here?
Because the news media doesn't provide any information to that effect, but he's certainly organizing, and he's got the money to do it.
No, we got the information right here.
Yeah.
He organized it on the 5th of July, according to Wikipedia. Let me see. Where's the link? Do they have a link to it? Let's see.
Musk.
Yeah,
Hitler salutes, on the podium at that time. No way they were not Hitler salutes. It's obvious.
Yeah. Of course they were.
And Trump himself, was reported by his wife as into reading a book with the speeches of Hitler, as bedtime reading.
Well,
these characters are bizarre.
Well, America Party right now does not have a link, and if there's no link on Wikipedia, it probably doesn't exist. Hold on, let me do one second.
So he doesn't have a public face yet.
No, it does. Right here.
Yeah.
Let's see. So he has here's a web page. Here. I'm going to share it. I'll share it.
Yeah.
I'll screen share so you can see it. That's fair enough, I think. Let's see. Let's see. Screen share. Hold on, my friends. Thank you for being patient with me. Where is the party? Ooh, where's the party? Come on. Where's the party? It's here. Okay. Give me a second. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
Because I know because I actually have it. I have it up. I have to just put it
Yeah.
on.
If they were to split the Republicans, that would be a breakthrough.
Well, they might be able to.
Yeah. But
And
even then, the MAGA people are getting alienated from MAGA. Like Trump himself said that the MAGA people are turning anti-Zionist and anti-Jewish as well.
Trump
He
just said
mentions this specifically.
here is the party here.
Wow.
Here's the party. Let's just web page. Okay.
Doesn't even know what America is.
Well, I'm just showing it to you. Okay.
Well, all of a sudden, Canada's annexed the United States of America. Like.
Yeah. Stay in the loop. So you can kind of here. So here it is. This is basically it. Web page.
Oh yeah.
Volunteer, media stuff. Their pillars.
Fair
Mission.
economy. Oh yeah.
So
This is like the Nazis calling themselves socialists.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah. Secure nation, strategic self-reliance, selective alliances, and modern defense to keep America safe. Modern defense. To keep America safe. I didn't know that America was invaded. Wow.
Me too. No, that's the basis for the tariffs. They claim an emergency exists because of immigration and drugs. You have to have an emergency to charge you tariffs. That's what the tariffs are all about. This is what people don't know. The tariffs are based on a law that has been challenged. It's been challenged now in the court. I guess you haven't seen that. I thought I sent you that law. Yeah. It was signed by Jimmy Carter about almost 50 years ago to limit the power of the president. And Trump is abusing it and charging people tariffs based on them either selling drugs or undocumented migration. And majority of people who are being tariffed are not selling drugs, nor do they have migrants coming here without documents. So it's all farce. Anyway, here's the American Party. Y'all can check it out if you want. AmericanParty.org. Okay, that's it. That's it. So I think you're right. Excuse me one second.
But in terms of, the actual people's mobilization, Bernie Sanders is mobilizing big numbers of people at rallies. He started off with 3,000, ended up, with a rally of 60,000 people. AOC even came to join them on the podium because she wants to be president, I guess. So there is a movement there outside of the Democratic Party. But we have to begin, with the appreciation that the American working class is corrupted with imperialist plunder, and they get, the organized, labor movement has, super high wages, and then that keeps, the workers quiet. For instance, United Auto Workers, UAW, was supporting Trump, because he was talking about bringing back jobs, for the American auto industry. So he got the support of the United Auto Workers. So how are you supposed to form a labor party when one of the biggest unions there, is supporting the opposition? It's very problematic, very difficult, to organize in the United States. Here in Canada, we've broken up the two-party system since a long time. And there was a Labour Party here, and now we have a Quebec National Party of the left as well. So there's about 5 major parties here in Canada. And the current government is not even a majority government. It's minority government very susceptible, to popular protest. And so the Prime Minister Carney has just announced that they're going to be recognizing the state of Palestine at the United Nations General Assembly in September, when France does, and when possibly the not so great Britain does as well. And then the Labour Party there is about to be overthrown, by a political revolution led by Corbyn, who was expelled from the Labour Party by Starmer, and he's coming back with force, and they can turn things around there. That would be sort of, quite important. And then the United Front in France, called the New Popular Front there, they're the largest political party, the poised to form a government, being blocked by the President Macron, who himself has had to, back down in face of public protests and say that France is going to recognize, the state of Palestine in September at the General Assembly in September. So, these are tipping points. There was a previous tipping point when the United Front could have won the election previously. The presidency they could have won if they hadn't split between the various factions. There's only 2% difference. And that 2%, that stopped Mélenchon from becoming president was stolen, by both, in one instance, the Communist Party got about 2% of the vote and took it away from Mélenchon, the Insoumise, movement. And then the other one was the Socialist Party, which did the same, because they each wanted to become the government, with no chance of doing so. Sort of idiotic. So this time there is a true united front, and it includes, both socialists and the Communist Party. So it should be able to do something about, getting rid of Macron, who's trying to save his skin by coming out in support of Palestine.
Well, I think you did mention something very important that I overlooked, and that was the United Auto Workers. When you have labor unions are organized labor, even though they don't represent a large number of Americans, they still have an organized capacity. And you are right about this. That really could be the split that keeps Trump in power.
Yeah.
So they support the tariffs. I don't know why. They have not one freaking job has been created in auto because of the tariffs.
Yeah.
They support the tariffs. And you are exactly right about that. With those kind of labor traders hanging around, there's some of their members will vote for Trump in the hundreds and thousands, or vote for Republicans in the midterms and in the next major election for president. And you're exactly right.
Yeah.
The political system in the United States is set up to prevent its being overturned by voting.
Yeah.
And that's a reality, and it's a tragic reality. But unless we, like you just did, lay out the reality of the situation, then we can't develop a strategy, or at least analyze what we can and can't accomplish. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's so naive, it's so sort of reactionary on the part of the United Auto Workers to be supporting Trump. Supposedly, to bring back the auto production industry to the United States of America. From where? From China. That's where the Tesla is made, in China, so. And the most modern and the least expensive, electric vehicle in the world is not Tesla. It's the Chinese, model BYD, I think it's called.
Yeah.
They're not allowed into the United States of America at all. They're being forced, to buy, much more expensive Tesla. In Europe, they get in there a bit, but not very much.
Well, this is an important point also that I read this week, a comment somewhere, that the United States' approach is bullying, threats, and tariffs to force you to allow me into your market.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not going to say enlightened, but a more democratic capitalist, if that oxymoron can even exist, say we have a good product. Let me show you our product. Let's compete and see what product is better. That's why the Chinese car is not sold here. They can sell a Chinese car here. You at the General Motors, Stellantis, or the other U.S. firms could form a partnership with a Chinese company to bring the cars here. Yes, they could.
Yeah.
If they're capitalists, they're going to make some fucking money, right? Okay, yeah. I'll ally with you. Let's build a plan here. You'll sell the cars here, and we'll split the profits 70, 80 for you, 20 for me. I mean, come on. I mean, the house. If I can sit here on a Zoom call, tell you about it. Don't tell me somebody in Detroit, DC can't figure it out. The car would sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
People want to buy a new car. People's cars, maybe 7, 10 years, time for a new car. Okay, you set a good price, you would buy the damn thing, and
Yeah.
and it would lower the emissions in
Mm.
throughout the country, especially within the bigger cities.
Yeah.
That's how backwards they are. They won't even do something to help their own people buy the products.
Yeah. And
People
they,
would buy the damn, guess they would buy the car.
yeah. I mean, 20,000 compared to 30,000, like big difference. Yeah.
It's a big difference. I mean, and most people can finance $20,000. Yes, you can, because that's the major. Most credit cards that they give you will stop at $20,000. That's where it'll stop for your first card, okay, or second card. So they can finance that, okay, and that would end that problem. But they want to make sure that their companies hurt other countries. That's why they impose these tariffs, to hurt the other country instead of trying to have a worldwide capital system that works. No, and
Mm.
I predict. And I hope I'm right. I hope I'm right. I hope I'm wrong. That a year from now, if 10,000 jobs have been created, I'll be surprised. Be
Hmm.
surprised.
Hmm.
If even
Yeah.
10, and with the 10,000, where are those jobs?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
also,
this is, it's just national security that Trump administration is after. It's not after, like supporting their own national bourgeoisie, even, in the auto industry, because, um, because, um, you know, let's say the production of cars, electric cars, etc., was brought back to the United States of America. Okay, as Trump claims that, he's proposing. How many jobs would that create? Like Steve, considering that these factories are not only automated, but they're roboticized. So you have these
right,
robots, building the cars,
right, right, right,
and then one guy standing there watching them. One guy.
right. Well,
That's
yeah,
it.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm saying to you, I don't know. Well, we can find out how many people are actually involved in production of robotics cars. We could find out, but it's not that many. It can't be that many.
Oh, I've seen assembly lines, which they have like a row of robotic arms on both sides of the
Right,
vehicle,
right,
like five deep,
right.
and both arms are working at the same time, on either side of the car. Like it's incredible. I mean, and the production cost for something like that, is rather minimal. They could, surely, produce something, that was, very inexpensive, but they refuse to do so because they have, monopolies and such, in which they um, uh, come to a common agreement as to what the price of the car should be, so that no one, manufacturer is going to undermine the price, set, by another. And so they, monopolize, the market, by having the same, price, set, for all the cars, all together at the same time. And there's no competition anymore. So, forget about free enterprise, so-called free enterprise. The only free enterprise economy that I know of in the world is in China. Really.
Hmm. So BMW, BYD, Fiat Chrysler, Ford, General Motors, Hyundai, Nissan. Yeah, they're really in trouble too. Tesla, Toyota, Volkswagen. They're listed in article here, and basically this article is called automaker factory. I'll share with you guys. Let me share it here.
Mm.
Let me show it to everybody. We can see what's going on here. Here we go, right here. Okay. Here. So they have articles about this automaker factory robotics, what it means for jobs in electric vehicle production. They're talking here's what you're talking about right here, right? The arms on both sides. It's all being done by a computer,
Yeah.
right? So it's all being done by computer. Okay. So it says billions of dollars by the 1980s. This is like 45 years ago. 45 years ago, billions were being spent by automakers worldwide to automate fundamental tasks in their assembly plants. Okay?
Yeah.
Innovative technology did help it to rebound the next decade. Okay? So today it's a common part of factories, and it's starting to become another revenue source for automakers through providing robotic services to other companies. Okay? So they're talking about this, what you're talking about right here.
Yeah.
So how many people will actually be employed? Not too many. They're not gonna have more. They're not gonna have more than they need. Let's put you like that. They won't employ more than they need, and how much they're gonna pay them? That's another question too. Yeah, good point.
So I used to teach political economy. It's really fundamental, to knowing what to do politically. So
Sure is.
if the technological revolutions, like 3 of them so far, are undermining, the working class, because an auto factory used to employ like 5,000 workers, then it became automated and went down to 500, and now, like probably operates, with 100 workers.
Right.
So if there's no labor-intensive, production anymore, that means the working class is being undermined. There's not as many workers as there used to be. So what's going to happen to the workers and their children and all this, who, previously, always expected to be able to get a job, that was predetermined for them, that corresponded to what their parents were doing, guaranteed employment for the future. That doesn't exist anymore. So, okay, you could say, oh, well, they can go and, get higher education, become engineers and all that, but one, they don't have the money to do so because you have a private, educational system in the United States. And then 2, what is going to be waiting for them is a job in the military. The military is going to say, you don't have a job? Come here. We'll provide you with a job. We're going to give you a salary and all that. You'll get benefits, and afterwards, you can get, a GI Bill, to go to higher education and all that sort of thing. And we'll send you somewhere, to do the work, to do the job for your security. Well, security where? In the United States of America? No, way over there, somewhere like Afghanistan or Iraq, something like that, or Palestine, And so why is the United States security, dependent upon, what's happening in these other countries? Well, they never sort of, asked that question. They've not been educated, to ask questions. People are only educated, to obey, as if, it's like the highest level of production and efficiency is military discipline. And this is, the perfected model in the Zionist state of Israel, in which, you have all these high school students who are pulled into the military at the age of 18 before they even learned how to think for themselves independently, after going through an ideological education and knowing next to nothing really about the Jewish culture except for the Zionist movement. And they're put into the military and they'll obey any order, because they're supposed to be, fighting for the security of the Jewish people of Israel. Well, really, after they got killed, it's too late, for them to contemplate, whether or not they were doing that job or some other job, on behalf of crusading, United States of America, who was looking forward to the Zionist mercenaries doing the job for them to colonize, the whole Middle East, and tame it, and training Israel to be the mad dog of the Middle East. Oh my! I can get carried away with being sort of so pessimistic. So the level of unemployment in the United States right now is sort of important to know as well. I think here in Canada it's like 6.7%. So it's rising. It'll probably rise more, with the impact of the United States tariffs on Canada, which now have gone from 25 to 35%. Why did they go from 25 to 35%, increase of 10%? Because Canada came out, with a statement saying that it was going to recognize the state of Palestine. All of a sudden, 10% more on tariffs. These are political tariffs, obviously.
That's what they are. They're a political tariff. We have to get that message out. These are not simply economic tariffs. They are political tariffs. And that's what I discovered through my research this week. The idea that this is just about, well, our trade is in balance. I haven't told you this. Let me tell you what happened. I did some research using some AI websites, and I was compare them to see if they're accurate. And I found one of them was 10 years, was 1 year off, but that 1 year made a hell of a lot of difference. They had the wrong information, and I confronted them about the wrong information. And they were saying, well, this is a major change in the use of tariffs. The AI structures say this is a major change. Previously, it was just based on what you're saying, economic. Now it's political. They're using economic. They basically have become economic hitmen. We're going to do this to you because you don't do this for us. It has nothing to do with drugs or gangs or trade imbalances. No, because most of the countries in the world right now who have tariffs have no immigration that's undocumented, and they aren't importing drugs to the United States. So they can't even make that argument, and that's why these are all being challenged. All these laws are being challenged in the courts right now because it's illegal on U.S. law based on what he's doing. It's illegal on U.S. law what's going on. But you're right; they are political. You're exactly right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Europe is being sort of corralled by the United States into an obedient crowd. And but for the United States to take on both Russia and China, don't think they can get away with that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. Here is a graph I just created for our viewers that looks at employment trends in employment and robot density in auto appliance manufacturing.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's perfect. That shows you.
For a maybe 100-year projection. So we see here the amount of as the use of robots increases, the amount of level of employment, and we're almost here.
Yeah.
This is 2020, 2040. It was 2030. So the prediction is in 2030 you will see the shift.
Yeah.
And you will see more as more unemployment of workers as robots increase.
Yeah.
The need for workers will decrease significantly.
Yeah.
So basically, this graph predicts that in 2060, which is 35 years from now, not that far away, you'll see this. Now, this is just prediction. I'm not sure what the model is, but they use some data. And this is the graph. So you're seeing what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The need for workers and the need decreases as the amount of automation increases. It's right here.
And the unions know this already. The working class, the power of the working class, in a Marxist sense, is obsolete. The working class doesn't have the power to overthrow capitalism anymore. It's been outmaneuvered.
Yeah, as far as being within the means of production, you're correct. As far as being, if at least in these industries, heavy manufacturing, appliance, auto, that kind of stuff. I would assume some like maybe furniture, maybe a little different, maybe not. But based on auto and appliance, on the data that this graph had, in 2030, in 5 years from now, you will begin to see the difference.
Yeah.
Employment will go down proportional to the increase in the use of robotics and AI.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very clear. Very clear.
And that's why I keep my eyes on this technology so we can use it for our information.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a hell of a graph, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, how we organize is a consequence of that graph. We have to be conscious of the fact that the labor movement is not what it used to be, and it's not the basis, of a labor party as it once was thought to be, like the New Democratic Party of Canada was a labor party. which just, blew it in the last election and became, less than the minimum, party status number in terms of the members of the House of Commons here. So, and the labor movement, was being led, by a bunch of people who didn't even know what they were doing, because they were talking about dental care when, the big issue was, the economic independence of Canada, like which issue is more important, sort of thing. So,
Yeah, well, that's why our viewers, please keep in mind, we're showing you things you're not going to see anywhere else.
yeah,
We're having conversation they're not going to have anywhere else. You need to spread this broadcast, share it, like it, and talk about it among your friends, allies, family, those of you know who think similar, and those who think differently. Show them that graph. Just
yeah,
show them that graph. Show them that. They haven't seen that before. No, they haven't. And
yeah,
if I got it using an AI app, sitting at my kitchen table, somebody else can show it to you too. They don't want you to know the truth.
yeah, yeah. So, um, this is what we need. People understand, the seriousness and the significance, the points that we're making here,
Right.
and who want to show it to other people so that they can begin to get some sort of, strategy into their political work and thinking. It's strategy that is slacking. Right now it's just
That's right.
single issue sort of struggles in which people go out, and bring pressure to bear and expect, some sort of concession to be made. That's, reformism. Okay, it's fine. Dandy, even, like the people are mobilized, but it's not a strategy. It is not a political revolution as even Bernie Sanders is organizing. And it is certainly not, a social revolution as needed. And when it comes to a matter of a social revolution, like in Palestine, where Hamas is being denounced as terrorists and all that, and being accused of all sorts of false criminal activities, the same thing happened, to these people here in the background here of this photo. These are the partisan fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto, from which my maternal family came from. My mother, in effect, and her sister were the only survivors. And these, were the partisans that were fighting against the Nazi occupation. And what did the Nazis call them? Terrorists. That's
There
where
you
the
go.
term comes from in the first place. Any indigenous revolutionary force is called a terrorist force and dealt with, as if it were a criminal gang and killed using that sort of justification. And so even though, they were lost, none of these people survived. Nonetheless, they started something that was an example for the world. The 1943, Warsaw Ghetto insurrection that held off the biggest, military force at the time, the Nazi army occupation of Poland for a month. Well, that certainly inspired, the partisan movement, elsewhere. And when they attacked the Soviet Union, eventually they got it together and they got rid of 8 million of the Nazi troops and lost 27 million at the same time, but they won. And then, but that blow, weakened the Soviet Union to such an extent that even though it was, industrially productive, thereafter, nonetheless, the best people were lost. And so the generation of the political degeneration of that regime continued until it just defeated itself and it became something, that it was never intended to be in the first place.
Well, Abraham, those are some real important historical points you just mentioned. And I appreciate you referencing your family and showing the images in the background.
Yeah.
I want to say something about this Hamas debate that we keep hearing. I want to share the poster about the international the rights of the child by the UN. You look over here on number 6, and what's it say? Every child has a right to be alive.
Mm.
Well, now, Israel and the United States are clearly violating this.
Mm.
This is an internationally recognized guide of how children's rights exist. So right here is all you need to say about Israel.
Yeah.
Are you Are you ensuring the right of Palestinian children to be alive? The answer is no.
Yeah, no, they're very overt about it too. You know, they say,
And this right. They're so overt about it. This is
yeah,
why we have to go to the ICJ and the ICC.
yeah,
Well, you have to take it. You have to take it there. This is right. I'm saying every child has a right to be alive. Governments must make sure that children survive and develop in the best possible way. So every country in the world, the citizens can take this sentence right here.
mm,
What is our government doing? Since it's clear that these children, the government of Israel, is not ensuring the right to live of the children. That's all you have to do.
yeah,
That's it.
mm,
That's all you have to say. I'm gonna tell you, this is my campaign now.
mm,
Get this message out.
mm,
This is what's going on. They are not ensuring that the children can live. The data shows it. So
mm,
any government in the world has a right to use the UN and other forum to get this taken care of. That's it.
yeah,
Period.
yeah,
I just want to show our viewers. You won't see this anywhere else. No, you will not. They don't care to show it to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's so many other Zionist spokespeople. You know, they blatantly, you know, say that they don't care about the children being killed because they are going to be growing up, you know, to be Palestinian fighters in any case, especially the orphans. Hamas, you know, was composed, you know, most of the Hamas fighters were composed of orphans.
Right. That's right.
So, you know, what else are they going to do? You know, like give up? No way.
Oh, no way.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I think we've, you know, hit the nail on the head.
I think so.
A few nails, actually.
A few nails, actually, you're right.
Yeah. So, we continue on and, we're going to get this, video out and, circulate it so that people can start to take, movement building seriously, not matter of, just going out to the occasional demonstration. You know, much more needs to be done. Much more needs to be taken into consideration and much more needs to be talked about as well. And here we are to talk about it.
We are.
Very good. Okay, great. Okay. Okay. See you next week, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, so in regards to this video, the first link in the description will take you to a playlist. This playlist is a real record of Holocaust survival, so I do suggest you get to it. It is a 5-parter. All 5 of them have Dr. Abram Weisfeld and his testimony. The second link in the description will take you to Dr. Weisfeld's channel, which should be brought up to 1,000 subscribers, and I ask you stupid fucking communists, why have you not subscribed yet? If you're real communists, and not the fake LARPers that I know most of you are, then you would be subscribing to him. I really do expect anyone claiming to be a communist to watch this video from the Electronic Intifada, which will play right now.
We wanted to now go to an interview that we recorded earlier with our longtime contributor, scholar, activist, organizer, writer, Shahad Abu Salama. Artist. She's an incredible artist.
Wonderful.
And she's a daughter of Jabalia refugee camp. She grew up there, of course, as a refugee. Her original villages are just a few kilometers away, of course, and she and her family have been through absolute hell the last 22 months. And Shahad, who is not in Gaza, has been trying to protect her family members from this nightmare, from this genocide. So we were able to speak with her. We recorded this earlier. Let's go to that incredible interview with Shahad.
Thank you so much for joining us, Shahad. A few hours ago, you posted on Twitter, X, that Israel just killed your neighbor, Ala Osama Abu Murad, someone you grew up with in Gaza. You've also lost many other friends and family members in this ongoing genocide, including your uncle Marwan and your aunt Haniya earlier this year. What do you want people to know about Ala and about the situation for people you're in touch with in Gaza right now, including the survivors of some of these massacres?
It's an ongoing grief. Like we still live in an open-ended funeral, as you can see, and there's no time to really process any loss because we have to stay strong for the survivors. We of course, like, there's no words to describe the devastating loss of all these loved ones, uncles, cousins, friends, neighbors, teachers. But we have to remember that all of them were like either a son or a father or a husband, and that they leave people behind who are our responsibility. Their survival is our responsibility. And for example, when it comes to Marwan and Haniya, they also lost two sons, Yusuf at the beginning of the genocide on the 27th of October 2023. My dearest cousin, he was actually the closest of all of them to me, and I was in daily touch with him. And then they killed my uncle and his wife Haniya and their son Wasim, who just became a father to a son he named Yusuf to commemorate his brother who was martyred at 27 years old with no crime, while standing outside the house, our grandparents' house in Jabalia refugee camp that they sought refuge to, the same family house where we were all born, actually. We were all born in that house. We're talking about the first Intifada, when 3 generational families would be like growing inside under the same roof. And we were one such family. Majid, my eldest brother, and my elder sister Majd, and me were born together with all of my cousins that are now killed. Few survive. Muhammad, 17 years old. He was 16 when he lost his parents and brothers, and he hardly survived. He survived with shrapnels, and he's still suffering the health complications of this injury. The shrapnel remains in his chest, and he hardly received any medical care in Gaza because of the endless flow of injured people, thanks to the endless crimes against our people and the devastation of the health sector. And they're so overwhelmed, so they can't provide the right medical attention to injured people. So Muhammad has been reporting shortness of breath. He's turning into like a skeleton, skin and bones, like right in front of me. And I speak to them at least twice a day. And I see them like in front of me, like shrinking, and I can't do anything. And everything we send to them is 50% deducted, and as if like you
And
know,
that's
like
because of the commissions that
because commissions, Yes, but we have to do that because they rely on us for the survival, and what other options are there? So it feels like we're like structurally vulnerable, that all forces are like collaborating to destroy any potential of our people's survival.
But you haven't given up on people, though. You are
I'm not
campaigning for them, and you're trying to help them. What are some of the things that you're doing and that other people like you with families still in Gaza are doing?
Yes. So I have launched a fundraiser to help me sustain their existence and survival, and support their evacuation and potential resettlement, hopefully, ideally in Spain, because I succeeded to evacuate 6 members of my family from the genocide and save their lives. And the fact that they killed my uncle and his husband and wiped out so many branches of my family, like shows that the danger at their life is not hypothetical. It's not like, you know, a matter of anxiety. It's real. It's real, and we live it with every waking moment. And Sarah, poor Sarah, like the youngest child of Marwan and Haniya, she turned 12. She turned 12 on the day that her parents were killed, and has been denied education, has been denied any sense of safety. She's dealing with like constant nightmares and trauma symptoms, various trauma symptoms. And when she talks to me, like, she's like, when are you, do you have any news about potentially us coming to join you? They look at me as if like I'm the only you know, hope. And it's hard to be burdening this responsibility, but I can't tell them as well that the whole world abandoned you and you have no option but to die. So I'm trying my best, and I'm trying to knock every door possible for them, because they are my siblings, and I don't subscribe to Western conception of a family, a nuclear family. As I said, I was born under the same rooftop with my cousins in my grandparents' home in Jabalia refugee camp, and this home Israel turned it to become our family's mass grave. And we're still witnessing an incredible loss, and they're facing situations of day and death every day. Even yesterday they were just coming back from checking on my older 2 uncles who are disabled and are in dire conditions, and they were checking on them, just coming back. Israel bombed nearby in Sheikh Ridwan, a massacre, a bloodbath. And the dangers, they don't know how, like, they survived. Everything was hailing on them, the dust and everything, and they were just running for their lives. And this is like almost every day there's a bombing nearby, and there are kids growing under these conditions. Wasim, who was martyred together with my uncle and aunt, his parents, he left a newborn, Yusuf, who just turned 1 year old on the 7th of, he would turn 1 year old on the 7th of October. So he's just 10 months now. And he's growing under these conditions. He's growing in a tent. And what can a tent do to protect a child from 1,000-ton explosives?
Shahid. Another dear brother, cousin, family member of yours, Mahmoud Abu Salama, is a journalist in Gaza. He's still in North Gaza, one of the few left doing the work of bearing witness and telling the world, showing the world what's happening, especially in Jabalia and Gaza City. And your concerns about Mahmoud are obviously justified, especially after the latest murders by Israel of Anessa Sharif, Mohammed Koreka, and the other journalists, the Al Jazeera crew a few days ago.
Ibrahim Tahir, Muhammad Nofal,
Yeah.
Muhammad Al-Kahlout.
Yeah. Talk about Mahmoud's situation and
Mahmoud,
yeah, go ahead.
Mahmoud Abu Salama has been alongside his colleagues, have been doing God's work on the front line and reporting from conditions of life and death, where they're wearing a vest, a press vest that is supposed to protect them, and instead it's making them legitimate target in the eyes of Israel's terrorists. And he has survived multiple close encounters with death, 1,000 times almost lucky. Incredible. I've been following him closely. I've never missed a notification from him, and I'm always every day on calls with him throughout these times. He's one of my closest cousins since childhood, and I'm really worried about his life. This is even before the last targeting of 6 journalists in the Ashifa tent just a couple of days ago. For like last week almost now, Israeli media, an infamous platform called Israel Speaks Arabic, has been sharing a video of Mahmoud that he filmed of him evacuating a family, helping to evacuate a family to safety. This family had just been targeted by an Israeli strike while on the journey of displacement, this journey of death that Israel forces people to do after imposing displacement orders on them, forcing them to either leave or die. But even as they leave, they cannot escape the death. So he was recording the aftermath of one such crime, and used his own vehicle to help a group of children who were in complete panic after losing and witnessing God knows what terror they've seen. And they were in horrific conditions, in absolute panic. And in the Israeli propaganda platforms, they dismissed his whole coverage as Pallywood, which of course were not new to these tactics of delegitimization that they use against the Palestinians. And they've used this claim against so many crimes to deny so many crimes that they've perpetuated against the Palestinians in the past as well. As a media scholar, I can say that they even used the footage of Muhammad al-Durra, who was killed while under the arms of his father in the second Intifada. Sorry, they also dismissed that as Pallywood in their platforms, and Israeli journalists also engaged in the same dehumanizing rhetorics, denying a crime that was perpetrated before camera. And no accountability happened then, no accountability happened for any crime. And here Mahmoud has survived multiple injuries as a result of targeted attacks against him and his colleagues. Even with Anas al-Sharif and Hussam Shabat and others, there are horrific videos that record close encounters they had with death because of Israel's constant deliberate targeting of journalists in a desperate attempt to silence the truth.
Yeah, they were hunted. They were hunted.
And journalists are being hunted, and so your fear for Mahmoud, given the incitement against him, we know that many of the other journalists were killed. Some were just killed in their homes or their families were murdered. But with other cases, including Anas, Hussam Shubat, and many, many others, they were preceded by these kinds of incitement campaigns.
That's right.
Where a target
Mahmoud
is placed on them.
The same tactics. Mahmoud is using right now the same tactics, and they are also accusing him of being a member of Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
Complete lies.
As they did with Anas al-Sharif. And
exactly.
And Hussam Shabat. And yeah.
So,
and he's seeking every avenue to try and save his life and his family's life. Mahmoud is a beloved husband and a father to 3 beautiful children, Majd, Muhammad, and Sanad, and they all deserve to live. They deserve a future. And I don't know, what is more urgent than this, especially in light of, Israel crossing all red lines, and we're just waiting for them to target the next victim. And Mahmoud is one of the latest prominent journalists who remain alive in North Gaza, particularly. And his account is very important to survive for humanity. So I hope that we succeed in saving his life before it's too late. The impacts of the genocide is multifaceted and beyond description, and we need tens of thousands of podcasts like this to give it justice. But there is one last case that I'm also heavily invested in, that I'd like to talk to you about, hoping that maybe someone somewhere has the power to help give some relief to these survivors. So one relative of mine, his name is Muhammad Ala Qarmout. He is a wanted child with no surviving family. He's one of 8 family members who were completely killed, wiped out from the civil registry on the 23rd of November or 13 of November 2023, so early in the genocide. And Muhammad was evacuated alone to Qatar in January 2024 with help from the Qatari Red Crescent. And I'm glad this happened, because if not, maybe we couldn't have guaranteed Muhammad's life. However, Muhammad is alone in Qatar, in Mujamma al-Tumama, in a Tumama complex. He was evacuated as a 15-year-old, and now he's 17. And ever since, he's been calling to be reunited with his grandmother, I'tidal, who is my aunt, and the sister of my other aunt, Haniya, who was killed, the wife of Marwan. And she lost her husband and her 3 children as they were on a journey to visit her and check on their mother, who was seeking shelter somewhere. And they bombed them on the way and killed them all. And they killed her husband in his attempt to go check on their home in Beit Lahia. And they killed the mother of Muhammad, who's now in Qatar, with all her children and her husband. And no one is left but him for her. And she's suffering from the Crohn's disease.
And she's still in Gaza.
She's still entrapped in Gaza,
Yeah.
with no
So-
one caring for her. Like her, of course, like she's with her brothers and sisters, but everyone has families and grandchildren, and in dire situations. They lost their homes. They're all in horrific conditions. And if we could just get I'tidal, because she also has serious medical needs, to join her her grandchild, her only surviving grandchild, in Qatar. And I've been trying to do this task that looks so simple, but is made so impossible for like months. I've been calling and emailing and doing everything possible, entrusted by Muhammad and my aunt I'tidal to reunite them, and nothing is happening. Nothing is happening.
I mean, is there a way for people to be evacuated? I mean, we know that there are limited numbers of evacuations. It's not very clear how they all take place.
It is happening.
Sorry?
There are evacuations that are happening. Italy succeeded to evacuate families and residents and orphans and injured people, and Norway and Belgium. So why not Spain? Why not the UK? Even the UK, I think, happened, although very limited cases. But there needs to be more pressure on Israel. There can't just be one option for the people of Gaza to just die or starve. Like they can't do that to our people, and they can't leave our people abandoned with no options. They have to provide channels to support these survivors.
these survivors of a genocide that all these governments have tolerated, supported, sometimes aided, armed very directly.
Yeah.
But
children who have no access to any basic rights,
yeah,
no medical or psychological care. They've lost their parents, they've lost their siblings, they've lost their homes, and they have no access to education for 2 years. They're terrified. They have so many struggles, day-to-day struggles, to secure food, to secure water, to secure medicine. It's incredible. It's incredible, the unprecedented dehumanization that shouldn't be tolerated by anyone, and yet it continues. It continues.
Shahid, just before we wrap up, it's clear to me that you're not getting used to this suffering. It's not being normalized for you. The pain is very raw and very real. You said in the beginning it's an open-ended funeral, and we can hear that in your voice. We can see it in your face. We feel it. We feel it every day. You are in a situation where it's even more unbearable because you have close families and friends still in Gaza. You've lost so many people, and you don't want to lose those who remain. You want them to be rescued, to survive, to live. You want to see them again, to hug them again. And I know many of our friends and colleagues from Gaza who are in the same situation.
But
And you have to,
a simple right, and yet it feels impossible.
yeah.
It feels that they are completely abandoned, and the world has accepted that, as if the Palestinians are born to die. We are shouldering a burden that is too hard to carry alone, and too hard to fathom, like how to describe. And those survivors, like enough torture them. They need recognition of the crimes that have been committed against them. They need a chance to heal. They need to return to their ordinary lives. They need to see a future, and it is our responsibility to ensure that. And we can't just watch them suffer and sit back and do nothing.
We're witnessing a Holocaust, and we were always told never again. And we read history books about how people during the Holocaust of the 1940s set up underground networks to rescue Jews, to bring people to safety, to reunite families. And this was something we thought was in the history books, and now we're living it, you're living it. And it's
we're also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ali.
No, go ahead.
So we're also living like hierarchies, where I'm witnessing those hierarchies of how, like, different refugees are treated depending on where they come from and who has expelled them from their home countries. So even in Spain, like, I see it with my own eyes, the treatment of Ukrainians vis-a-vis the treatment of Palestinian refugees. The level of apathy towards our lives is unbearable and outrageous, and shouldn't be accepted, and it should be called out. And people just, like, take it as if, like, it's a job, like, as it feels like all these human rights organizations are just sustaining these structures and treating us as cases,
Yeah.
as you know, like they do their jobs from 9 to 5, while we're suffering nonstop. We're suffering nonstop, and even in their 9 to 5 job, 9 to 5 weekday job, it is just, it's incredible. They fall short. They fall short. I'm so exhausted, and it feels like we're just repeating ourselves, and I'm refusing to allow like anyone to tell me that no, there's no hope for your family but to die or starve, and this is their reality, and we just have to normalize it and accept it. We cannot normalize it.
No.
Cannot. How can we normalize it? And I'm so acutely aware that I am myself a survivor, and I was born by accident. Like if my father wasn't released in the 1985 prisoners exchange that was imposed against Israel because of Palestinian resistance, my whole family didn't have a chance to exist. My dad wouldn't have met my mom, and none of us wouldn't have been born. And then the day I was born, in a curfew on Jabalia refugee camp in the middle of Intifada, with a soldier interrupting my mom's journey of labor and pointing a gun at her belly, and all of what we suffered ever since the second Intifada, the campaign, the so-called summer rains, then cast lid, then pillars of clouds, then all of these uninterrupted bombardments of Gaza, that so many crimes of which happen in front of us, around us. Like we escaped so many crimes by accident, and these people need a chance to be before it's too late.
Shahad, I just, we, after almost 2 years of this, it's hard to find words anymore, but you with your words have expressed the ongoing horror, the unbearable pain that is unrelenting. And I just want you to know that we hear your voice every single day. I see your posts on Twitter X, and they're powerful. I see that you haven't given up hope for your family and for your people. They haven't given up hope in you. The people in Gaza tell us every time we speak to them that they see their hope in us when we speak out, when we keep talking about Gaza. And you have reminded us powerfully of our collective responsibility to do that, especially those of us living in the United States and Europe and the countries that are directly responsible for this genocide. I don't know what I can tell you that can ease this pain, Shahad, except that we will continue doing this work. We're grateful to you. I hope that that people listening and watching will take to heart, be visible, speak out, scream and shout about Gaza. Don't give up on anyone there. Nobody in Gaza has given up. No one has given up on themselves, on their loved ones, on their family. We can't give up on them. We can't normalize this. Shahad, please know that among our viewers and listeners, there is so much love for you and so much support. And we love you too. And we're grateful to you for coming here and sharing these difficult and painful details.
And I have to say that you have been like an integral mechanism of survival for me since I was in Gaza. And you're continuing to be like our voice when we're tired. And I'm just really grateful that you exist, that your examples are there for the people. No one should feel that they can't do anything. Everyone has a role to play. And we are embodying this example as we live and as we exist and resist. And Israel has to pay the price for all these crimes and injustices they committed against our people for 4 or 5 generations.
Yeah.
So hopefully Palestine will be free in our lifetime. We just have to keep pushing and never give up in the face of this evil.
It's painful. The pain is real. We acknowledge it, but we're not defeated in any way. We're not giving into it. Thank you, dear Shahid. I hope next time we speak to you, we'll have better news. We'll have an end to this. And we're so grateful to you. And take as good care of yourself as you can, because we need you and we need your voice as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Stay strong, Habibti. Talk soon.
Free Palestine.
I mean, I was moved when we recorded that video, but watching it, yeah, she's just the searing pain of watching your loved ones who you grew up with suffering without any respite, over and over and over again in so many different ways. Just the psychological torture and the physical torture that Israel is doing to Palestinians, and to be so far away and to know intimately those neighborhoods that are now erased. I don't know. We're so grateful and so deeply sorry. I'm just deeply sorry for everything that Shahid and her beautiful family are going through.
Yeah, and we're grateful to Shahid for being willing to speak about it, because it's so painful. It's painful to listen to, but it was painful for her to speak. And I think after we recorded that, we all needed just time. And listening to it, as you said, I found it harder to listen to it than when we recorded it, because when you're doing an interview, you're trying to listen, but you're also focused on what's coming next. And now I was just listening and bearing witness to it, and I'm just so acutely aware that there is, Shahid is, because there are so many Palestinians from Gaza who are outside Gaza who are going through what Shahid is going through every minute, every day. They're worried about their parents, their loved ones. They've lost so many people. They couldn't be with them. They couldn't hold them. They couldn't console them. They couldn't go to their funerals. There are people in Gaza who lost loved ones who are outside Gaza. I'm thinking of our friend, the journalist Ahmed Draimli, who is in Gaza, who's surviving, who he still posts, and his mother was in Egypt. She was ill, and she passed away in Egypt in hospital, and he couldn't be with her. His siblings in Gaza, they couldn't be with her. They couldn't hold her hand in her final days and hours. They couldn't say goodbye to her. And it's just an enormous crime, this Holocaust. Enormous. I don't think in decades we're going to be able to grasp what has been done and what is being done. And I, like all of us, I go between, I think, a sadness, the phrase that Shaht used, an open-ended funeral, stuck with me. But I feel rage and anger.
Yeah, I think those are the only two emotions that that we're all feeling, is bottomless rage, bottomless sadness, and we have to figure out what to do with that as well.
I'm angry. My rage is only increasing. Most of you so-called communists are nothing but LARPers with lots of money. I don't care about your personal struggles. I care about Palestine. There is not much more I can do. I am held back by a lot of factors. I am still, however, doing whatever I can do. And if you are so if you guys are so unmoved by what you just saw on the electronic intifada, then you are my enemy. If what you just saw didn't move you, didn't reach you in any way, you are my fucking enemy. But anyway, next up, another Here and Now, hosted by Abraham Weisfeld, PhD, and co-host Steve Struggle from the original Black Party for Self-Defense from the 1960s and 1970s. Free Palestine. I just read it. I just realized I said Black Party, but I meant Black Panther Party. Gosh, I can't believe I did that. But yeah, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense from the 1960s and 1970s.
Great. Okay, here we are, here and now. Steve, let's see now. We want to get more volume for your audio, so let's see what you can do so that everybody can hear you well.
How about now? Is it better?
That's better.
Okay. That's the best I can do.
Okay. So we've got the two major subjects to take under consideration, both the United States of America turmoil, which is about the point at which it seems to have arrived, and Gaza, Palestine. So, but I'd like to explain, first of all, the background image that I have here, because I haven't had a chance to do so yet. And these are partisans in the Warsaw Ghetto, where my mother's family comes from. And they're, these are the ones, who fought in 1943 insurrection against the Nazi occupation of Poland and the Warsaw Ghetto in particular, when there was 30,000 Jewish people left out of the 350,000 who were detained there initially and then sent to the death camps. Of the remaining 30,000, they organized themselves into this resistance. It took them a long time to get organized as a resistance. I'd say that's pretty slow, but under the circumstances, they had to get the arms that they didn't have before. They seem to have some uniforms that they got from the Polish military, and they all have automatic machine guns as well that they probably got from the Polish army, even though they didn't get as much as they needed. So, but, if you have a look at them here, they're all skinny, they're all really skinny, Why? Because they're being starved. That was the sort of tactic of the Nazi military, to keep, the occupants of the Gaza, the Gaza ghetto and the Warsaw ghetto, same thing, both being kept, in a very weak condition, so they couldn't resist, but they resisted anyway. And here, this group of partisans, when the military came in to take the remaining ghetto inhabitants away to the death camps, they resisted, and they kept the military out of the Warsaw Ghetto for a month. And so I think it's appropriate, that these partisans are here at the same time that the Gaza partisans are resisting the occupation of the Zionist military in Gaza at this moment. They're trying to take over Gaza City with 1 million inhabitants, where probably the resistance forces are concentrated, and where probably the prisoners of war are contained as well. So it's a very decisive moment. The Zionist military is afraid to go in there, and they're telling the prime minister they can't do it. No way, can they get away with that? And they're going to suffer a lot of losses if they go into that. But the political leadership couldn't care less, and they want them to go in there, because, well, the prize, there's a prize, waiting for them, after the occupation of Gaza. The prize is the offshore natural gas under the Mediterranean that's in territorial waters of Gaza. So they have to take over Gaza to claim, sovereignty over the gas fields, for which they've already signed a contract in 2023 with Egypt. So Egypt wants the gas as well. So they're not going to sort of, dispute the Zionist control of the Gaza Strip. And so they're not helping out, the Palestinians there very much, except for stopping them from being sent into the Sinai Peninsula, which is what the Zionist, regime wants to do with the Palestinians of Gaza. Want to boot them out, send them off into the Sinai, and they're making life so miserable in Gaza so that they're going to want to leave voluntarily. So that's what they call voluntary emigration. But Egypt doesn't want the Palestinians in the Sinai because they are a revolutionary people. And they don't want to have a bunch of, revolutionaries, not just a bunch, but 2.3 million revolutionaries coming into Egypt, which they are with great difficulty maintaining control, military, martial law control over the Egyptian people who are trying to sort of resist and will resist that regime. So that's what this picture here, in the background of my profile is all about. Now, let's get down to it, Steve. I have a video of the police, taking over control and putting under siege the governor of California. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, here it is.
Earlier today, U.S. Border Patrol agents conducted an immigration raid in Little Tokyo near an event held by Governor Gavin Newsom. Dozens of agents showed up, many of them wearing masks, in front of the Japanese American National Museum. JANM is a historic museum in Los Angeles known for highlighting and preserving the history of the abduction and forced incarceration of more than 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. Many Angelenos, including representatives of the museum and local officials, have drawn parallels between Japanese incarceration camps and the current administration's detainment of immigrants. The Little Tokyo raid was led by Chief Border Patrol Agent Gregory Bovino from the El Centro sector, who also led the recent raids in MacArthur Park and Sacramento. Bovino did not answer LA Taco's question when we requested comment, but he told other members of the press that they detained one individual. Our reporter Lexus Olivier Ray captured video of an agent putting his hands on and threatening to arrest a member of J-Town Action and Solidarity who was there documenting the raid. The identity of the individual who was detained is unknown, but Mayor Karen Bass appeared at the scene to denounce Border Patrol's publicity stunt. According to Mayor Bass, Border Patrol's presence in Little Tokyo was in direct response to Governor Newsom's widely publicized press conference.
They're talking about disorder in Los Angeles, and they are the source of the disorder in Los Angeles right now.
At the press event, Newsom announced redistricting plans to combat President Donald Trump's attempts at gerrymandering in Texas.
Do this right outside one of the press conferences is an intentional, right? It's a political stunt.
That's it.
Well, yeah, I was talking to an activist yesterday about this stunt, and let's break it down a little bit though. There is no coincidence that the Border Patrol was sent to Little Tokyo, to the Japanese Historical Museum, when the governor of California was present at a press conference. They did not come there to detain anyone. That was just a convenient outcome of their presence. They came there. This is the Border Patrol. The border's a long way from LA. They came there to harass the head of the government of the state of California. Now consider what that means. A day or two after Donald Trump, U.S. president, decides to take over the police of Washington, D.C. and threaten black youth with brutality at the hands of federal law enforcement. It says to me that there is a split in the ruling class of the United States in the sense of why would the president have an agency that is harassing an elected governor of a state? I don't have to like the governor. And it's not like in Alabama when the federal government had to escort the two black women into the University of Alabama, or in Arkansas when federal troops had to protect black girls and black boys going to a high school in Little Rock. They were enforcing federal law. There's no law being enforced here. They just chose to lie about their presence to intimidate the governor and the people of California and Los Angeles in particular. And that's what this was all about, to harass and hopefully spread fear in a community that has done nothing wrong but get up in the morning, go to work, go to school, open their stores. This is a very peaceful area. I know this area very well. It's across the street from the metro station. And in general, I can say undocumented people do not go there to find work. They don't. So this was just something they did. And the lack of, what's concerning us is, one, the lack of criticism by the elected officials, and also the minimal public outcry. There has been some outcry, but it has not been what it needs to be, because not that people are necessarily getting used to it, even though I do think some people are getting used to it. It's, oh, well, nothing I can do about it. But at a certain point, there is some confusion as to why this is happening. This was done and when we see the president overruling a mayor in Washington, D.C., a city with no real power. Washington, D.C. is the same as Puerto Rico in many respects, except Puerto Rico is a bigger area, but Washington, D.C. does not have any federal. They have no voting rights in the Congress. The person in Congress is non-voting. Why don't they have voting rights? Because they're a black area. Why don't they? I mean, tell me. There's no rational reason why Washington, D.C. doesn't have voting rights in Congress. Why? Okay, so why is the Border Patrol? Were they planning to go into the press conference? Were they told to not go in there? Why didn't they go in? That's what I want to know. Why did they stop outside? Since it was their task to harass the governor, go inside and harass the governor. I guess they didn't want that seen in the media. The man who was leading the charge has publicly said, I don't have to listen to the mayor of LA. Now think about that. You are a head of a federal agency telling the public, I don't listen to your mayor. Your mayor means nothing to me. That's really a step beyond what's normal. So what you're seeing now in the United States, and everybody across the world needs to pay attention and stop kissing Trump's behind. So many world leaders want to be Putin shaking his bastard's hand. Why are you shaking this asshole's hand? People in Azerbaijan, people in Armenia, sitting down with him in the White House. Do you know who you're dealing with? man has verbally threatened Americans with brutality. Beat them up. I don't care. Do what you want with them. Those are not words of a president who has respect for his people. All the people, regardless of whether you like them or not. So we're seeing a real change in the nature of the public persona of the president. The man is a rapist. He has raped women, and some people put him back in power. He is a rapist. He's a racist. He's a rapist. He's an authoritarian. And this is how he does it. So that's what happened, man. I'm sorry, but that's really what happened here. And it's so beyond, it's so over the top that it may take a while for people to realize what's going on here. They've threatened to create an Amy Goodman 2 days ago. I just saw it last night. I didn't prep it for the show, and I'm sorry. Reported that the president is now planning to create a special Army National Guard task force based in 2 or 3 military bases to attack cities where he wants to send troops. He claims that these cities are overrun by crime, yet he's only choosing areas that are run where black people are the mayors. No, this is what's going on. I'm going to give you a little more about this. Would he dare to go to San Francisco? That's a democratically controlled city. Absolutely not. He would destroy the tourism. He would destroy the reputation of the city, and they wouldn't have it. That's the center of politics in California. He's going to go to LA, run by a black woman. He's going to go to Little Tokyo, housing Asian people. He's not going to go to South Towns. He's not going to Seattle. No. He's not going to go to Portland. No. He's picking towns that have a black and brown presence so he can intimidate that ethnic or racial group. That's what's going on. That's my analysis of it. And I want to warn all of our viewers, especially those overseas, do not get enthralled with Donald Trump and his showmanship and his con man and his salesmanship. The man is an authoritarian. He is a racist. He is a convicted rapist. So don't trust your daughters around him, or maybe even your sons. I'm sure he keeps some Viagra in his back pocket. I'm sorry, but that's just what's going on here. And the people of America, it seems like we're heading to some kind of decisive moment. I think the decisive moment actually was the raid in MacArthur Park. When they came out with the horses and came out with the squads to show we have force. I think a decisive moment has arrived in the United States, where this stunt in D.C. Let me tell you how that happens. The president he has the legal authority by law to declare an emergency. So what Trump does for everything is declare an emergency. Then somebody has to go to court to say there is no emergency. And while he has declared an emergency, he does what he wants. Good case is the sanctions acts. The sanctions bill has to do actions that are based on a bill that Jimmy Carter signed. Jimmy Carter, 40 some odd years ago, to limit the president in trade disputes. He's supposed to be able to put sanctions temporarily on imports from other countries to negotiate trade deals. But what has Trump done? He's taken this bill based on his emergency power, and he has now weaponized it against the political decisions of other countries. Case in point, Brazil. Case in point, India. There's nothing to do with trade or India or Brazil. That's strictly political because they're part of BRICS and they do business with Russia. So how could Putin stand and shaking this man's hand? I don't get it, but I'm not a politician. I'm not at war with the United States. So now we have the situation here with this DC maneuver. So Trump has 30 days. He can only have the troops there for 30 days. That is what the law says. So right now, he's trying to get some congressmen from the Senate and the House of Representatives to create a bill so he can extend the presence of the National Guard and the federal police in there. So this is only temporary, but he has to then make adjustments so he can get what he wants. So we're seeing a president who will declare an emergency to get what he wants politically. He's done this a number of times. And that's one of the major changes in the administration. Nobody's saying this but us. And that's where we're having the problem because the American system is so strict. The founding fathers were such demagogues and such power hungry bastards that they create a system where the people cannot even unseat their government. The people can't. The governing bodies have to, and they don't do that too often. So that's why you have the problem. There's no parliament here. There's no way of even a constituent assembly. They wouldn't care about a constituent assembly unless that body takes action on its own. It would have to declare itself independent or call for strikes, boycotts, or something else to put pressure on the government. Last week, Abraham, you made some very astute analysis of the political situation here. And a story came out this week that the UAW was supporting some Republicans somewhere. Exactly what you were talking about. Exactly what you were talking about. Here they are simply supporting the raids. They're supporting the Border Patrol, the trade union. By not opposing it, they are supporting it. Now we did get a resolution out of the very militant International Longshoremen Warehouseman Union in Oakland. The resolution supporting a conference on Gaza, labor is supporting Gaza. The LA branch of that union is supporting Trump. So exactly what you were saying. The working class organizations are split. I heard that there was some very good demonstrations in LA this week at the public schools with the Cheerleader group, the Campaign for Human Rights in LA. That's a Latino immigrant-focused organization that has been demanded to appear in Congress in a few months to discuss how they were behind the demonstrations in California. Yes, they have been demanded by a U.S. Senator, Josh Hawley, who Trump has denounced as he doesn't support Trump's economic policy, but they have to go to court nonetheless to show how they weren't behind the rebellions in Los Angeles. So they're using the Congress, they're using these emergency powers, they're using agencies like Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security, and Border Patrol to militarize and be an extra legal federal agency to carry out the whims of the president and his administration. And that's what's happening. Thank you.
There's another example of your analysis, which is taking place right now as well. In Washington, there's troops or police or National Guard that have been sent into Washington, D.C. under some sort of special regulation about crisis, management. And it seems to only, I'm told, apply to Washington, D.C. itself, under a federal jurisdiction. But there is an occupation happening in Washington, D.C. as well, is there not?
Yeah, I just explained that, but maybe I wasn't clear, so I'll explain it again. 3 or 4 days ago, well, let's go back a little bit, Abraham. About 20 years ago, there were these young black men who were accused of mass raping a white woman in New York City, Grand Central Park. Donald Trump was one of the main people who wanted them executed. He used his position as remember Trump used to run beauty contests. This is how he got his hands on the girls. Okay? He Miss America, Miss USA, Miss World. Donald Trump ran them for a long time. So when these young black men were accused, young teenagers and young adults, were accused of raping a white woman in Central Park, Donald Trump used his bully pulpit as a real estate mogul and beauty pageant organizer to denounce them and call for their murders and their killing. They were acquitted. They weren't guilty of this. He's doing the same thing now in Washington, D.C. He had a press conference where he said, I wish I had it. He talked like he was a thug himself. I don't care what they do. Let's beat him up, do what they want with him. This is what the President of the United States said. Okay, so then he has the law. See, Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, and other non-states, the territories, have limited jurisdiction. Nobody represents them in Congress. They have no senator. They may have a non-voting member in the House of Representatives. They're essentially a colony, but they have U.S. citizenship. Okay? So he has the right, he has the power. When they wrote these laws up, remember the founding fathers and the Congress have been very slick in how they write laws. And Washington, D.C. has limited authority over its police. The mayor controls certain things, the school board is controlled by certain things, but the right to have abortions, marijuana control is in the hands of the U.S. Congress, believe it or not. The Congress of the country. They have so they essentially are the government. I mean, overarching government of Washington, D.C. is the U.S. Congress. That's highly unusual. So what Trump did, he took a law that is already on the books again, and he created an emergency situation. He can call an emergency. He gets with a stomach ache, I have emergency. Okay. And he declared he took over the policing of Washington, D.C. So that's how the FBI, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, federal police agents, I guess Homeland Security and ICE, if they want to put them out there, are now the police for 30 days. This only lasts for 30 days. He's already in the news trying to have somebody in the Congress, Senate, and House write a bill to extend this as long as he wants, but it has to end in 30 days. National Guard has to be withdrawn, and the federal agencies have to be withdrawn, and policing has to go back to the District of Columbia Police.
We'll see if that happens. Yeah, that will be an interesting test case to see if he can get away with, extending this indefinitely.
Well, he has to pass, unless he just does it and says, I'm president, I'm doing what I want to do. He might do that way. Then somebody has to go to court to stop him. But he has to pass a bill to extend the presence. And the bill, at least as of now, there are no senators or congressmen that are publicly saying that they will help him create a bill. He has to pass both houses and then he'll sign it. But we'll see. But that's what's happening in D.C. And I've said earlier, what Trump has done differently than former U.S. presidents, he has used emergency powers and executive orders to make his changes come about. He has not gone through the legislature and I want to pass a law, work with me, House and Senate, to pass some law. He has gone around that. And that's what made the American political system so difficult, because there's no way the citizens can overturn it. The citizen, no, there's no option. It's only in the House, the hands of the legislature. There can be recalls. There's no recall of the president. There's no recall of a congressman. As I know of, you can't recall a congressman or a senator. You cannot recall them. You can only recall local people, governors, state house, maybe state house, state senate. So this is an outcome of how the American system has been set up to make sure those who are in power politically stay in power. And the citizens have to wait to vote for you every 2 or 4 years. That's it. So that's what's happening in D.C. And there has been opposition to this. I don't know the level of opposition. I don't know the level of support, but there has to be some opposition because this is a black town. Some whites are moving back in to gentrify. Most of them, but I'm just saying that's what's happening. People, I think, need to be clear on why it's happening in D.C. And he has threatened Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! Exposed 2 days ago that Trump is now planning to create a special detachment of National Guard and a few military bases around the country to be a roving intervention force to go to San Francisco, to go to L.A. again, Chicago, Detroit, where there are large black populations. So remember, Trump's first act was to deny civil rights to black and minority people and women and gay people in the U.S. in the Federal Work Agency. First thing he did, and there was very little outcry, very little, almost none. Here he goes again. Now he's threatening to beat up people, to kill people, to lock them up, probably with no due process. So there's definitely a change. At the same time, the Border Patrol, which has always been the anti-Mexican police, we've always called them, they're the anti-Mexican police. Now they're the anti-immigrant police, show up in L.A. to harass the governor. This is definitely a change in the rule of the president. It's unprecedented. When have governors been harassed by, again, not enforcing federal law like they did in the South for integration? No, that is different. They were there to harass the governor under the guise of, we're looking for undocumented immigrants. I've listened to Karen Bass. Come on, man. It's not cool.
Wow. Yeah, I found it very disturbing to see in the video that we just played before that when the military, surrounded and put under siege the governor of California there in the Japanese American museum of the illegal detention of Japanese Americans during the Second World War. There was one reporter that shows up, who was sort of, treated like a feather, just brushed aside. How come there was no mobilization? There was nothing. There was no demonstration. There was no sort of, mobilization of the civil society, activists, like they're not organized or what, or they were afraid or like it's.
No, that's not what happened. I can tell you that people in the area were mobilized, where there was notifications sent out. They weren't there too long. And I think that's one of the areas where there isn't a lot of rapid response network lookouts. They're basically organized in certain parts. The rapid response networks do exist in Los Angeles. Some are above ground, some are below ground. And I think what happened here, this was something that no one knew was going to happen. I don't think people came out and said it. The governor's visit was about his attempt. See, Trump has threatened to rig the elections by changing the boundaries of the Senate, of the congressional areas, so that he can get more seats in certain states. And so that's why Gavin Newsom was even at the museum, because he had come there to make a statement about how Democrats need to be organized to fight that. And if needed, they need to redistrict the states to get more Democrats. He's saying the Democratic Party needs to do the same thing. So that's why he was there. And so he was there on a political visit. The Border Patrol knew he was coming, or the Trump administration knew. Whoever is in charge of coordinating the ICE, Border Patrol, Homeland Security, military presence in LA, somebody either told them or they got the idea, hey, let's just go harass the governor. He shouldn't show up. Since they're opposed to Newsom, they don't want him in power. They threatened to arrest him. So that's what happened. That's why nobody was there, because it wasn't something people were organizing around to come to. And it probably is a part of the city where you might not have a strong rapid response network. And don't take this the wrong way, but the undocumented, the Asian community in general hasn't been a target of the raids. I'm just saying that's just reality.
But now they
And this,
are.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, now their communities were occupied by Border Patrol, so yeah, it's the first time.
Yeah. So, so that was their tactic, intervention
Yeah,
and conclusion before there could be a protest. So they put
right,
off
right.
an
Yeah,
action that they consider to be successful and as a role model for future actions. They
right.
can do this, like anywhere, like sort of, jump into a place and jump out, before there can be a response, from anybody. So that's why there has to be, as you say, a rapid response, reaction, action against the reaction of the occupation by the
Well,
military, of the police.
I think there are. I checked yesterday. I checked in with some activists in Southern California. Something is planned. I think the demonstration today was initially planned to be around Gaza. There's demonstrations across the United States today around Gaza. I'm assuming if there was one plan for LA, that they will have to extend the protest rationale to include what happened on Thursday. You just have to,
Yeah.
because this is a brazen use of presidential authority to carry out intimidation, harassment, and racial profiling against Latinos. Remember, Abraham, a judge a few weeks ago allegedly banned these type of raids by ICE, because ICE is raiding based on color of skin.
Mm.
Or if you're there documenting something, they're going to harass you too now. They're just going to grab you as well. One person there was detained temporarily. Where they went, who knows? But they had to let him go. So I think that the demonstrations today, if there are in LA, should hopefully the purpose be extended to demand to end these ICE raids and to protest what happened. And this is the second time actually a California representative has been harassed or even detained. Remember, a month and a half ago, Alex Padilla. I don't consider Padilla progressive, not really, but he did come to a press conference in the same area being held by Christy Nome, the head of Homeland Security. He went there with an escort by the FBI, and he started to speak, and he was beat down and arrested. So in the same area of LA, this is a U.S. senator.
Wow.
You say U.S. senator grabbed, thrown on the ground, knee in the back, and handcuffed for
Mm.
going to a press conference of Border Patrol, of Homeland Security, asking a question. So
Mm.
they definitely are out to harass and give California representatives a bit of their physical or political intimidation.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it's the uh, the opposition, the resistance, to this militarization and the martial law of
Yeah.
American civil society. I
Yes.
mean, there are Democrats, who are willing to sort of protest, and but the leadership of the Democratic Party
Nope.
doesn't
Nope.
seem to, like want to do anything, because they're sort of relying upon, Trump, making a bunch of errors, that is going to land them back into power at the next elections. There's midterm elections coming up. So the
Right.
Democrats think that they've got a monopoly on the opposition to Trump. They don't have to do anything and people are going to vote for them anyway.
That's
Well,
exactly
what if
what's
people
that's
don't vote
exactly
for them anyway, because they do the same thing anyway?
this is what I've been saying. They're being elected in the midterms is not assured. First of all, the laws that were passed in some ways for the big beautiful bill, some of the policies of the big beautiful bill could be said to actually improve some financial situations as far as taxes, etc. So some people might not vote against it, might not vote against Republicans. Secondly, people have to vote. Remember,
Mm.
voting is not required in the United States. It's optional. That's
Mm.
interesting. So people might not even vote.
Yeah.
And thirdly, those who do vote, I mean, there's many people, and then you have to register. You can't just walk up and vote. You have to register. So you can't, like, somebody who's upset with Trump has to now register to vote and get ready for the election next year.
Mm.
I see no one doing that. Who's the voter registration? I see nobody doing it.
Yeah.
Nobody. So if you claim you're gonna if you claim you're going to win politically next year, what are you doing this year to prepare for that? Nothing that I can see, but I don't see everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
don't think that they won't send Border Patrol to the election looking for undocumented people voting. Don't think they won't do it. Don't
Yeah.
think they won't send Border Patrol and ICE and Homeland Security to election booths. If they'll harass the governor who's speaking about taking back, defending Democratic rights, the Democratic Party power in California, that was an act against the Democratic Party in
Yeah.
many respects. And in the upcoming election, what happened? So
Yeah.
why wouldn't they send troops to the polls? Why wouldn't they do it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
And what I find pathetic about the American opposition is that they think that not voting and boycotting elections is somehow, being, radical, as if they're sort of, against the system. But, what they're doing is nothing. It's a big zero, this refusing, to get involved in elections as if it is a reactionary sort of, procedure. Well, it happens to be the only thing available, for them to do, and they
Yeah,
refuse to do that. Then what are they doing? Nothing.
yeah,
They
yeah.
don't even
That
have a
is,
rapid response, a force, to get out there and oppose, the
well,
occupation. It's,
it, it,
pathetic, I would say,
it,
at the level
well,
of resistance, right now.
this this president is really forcing people to call into, if not calling the question, to call into analysis what should be a proper response. Because not voting has been seen, well, I'm not going to vote 'cause I'm not going. Someone told me this recently. I was kind of like blown away because I was telling, and this is unfortunately this is how I feel about it. In New York City, there's a guy running for mayor from Democratic Social of America.
Zohar Mamdani. Mm.
Yes, and I was saying I'd vote for the guy.
Mm.
Why? Trump wants to jail him or kill him or defame him with a sex scandal.
Mm.
His reforms, okay, he might not get anything, but I don't care. I don't want the Republicans to win, so I'm gonna vote for him.
Mm.
Now, that's in some stance, in some political circles, that is not a progressive position. You're supposed to say, I don't vote for him because I'm not gonna vote for him because he's the capitalist politician. I don't know if that's gonna work right now.
Mm.
I think that at this point we may have to adjust that view because Republicans are for the program of Trump. Period. The program of Trump is against everything good and progressive. Period.
Mm.
So why would I not vote against Trump? Right now, voting is against Trump. That's when it's unfortunate because
Mm.
third parties are going to have to negotiate with Democrats who are running to demand that they incorporate third party programs or platforms.
Mm.
And the third parties don't have a lot of support, not because they're not progressive, but the American system is made on two parties. So
Mm.
it's a challenging time right now for politics. It really is.
Yeah.
Some people want to denounce when Alex Padilla was beat up. Oh, that's a media stunt. Shut up, fool. The FBI grabbed the man, threw him on the ground, arrested him. He's a U.S. senator. He's Mexican. Denounce that. Stop talking about it was a media stunt. It wasn't a media stunt.
Yeah.
They came to California. They surrounded the building where the governor was speaking.
Yeah.
That was a political act against the governor of California,
Yeah.
who has been hostile to Trump. So we got to rethink, how do we negotiate politics in the United States right now based on the realities of the U.S. political system? There is no third party.
Mm.
I hate to say it, there may never be a third party. Not because people don't want it, but it's the way it is set up. They set it up so you couldn't do it.
Mm.
Just like Let's say you want to be, if you're a middle school student in the United States, there's no student government. You're ruled by the principal. High school, there's student government.
Really?
No,
Wow.
there's no middle school students have no student government. Only high school students have student government. So middle school students have no, I'm just giving an example how something is set up so there's no power for the population. So middle school students have to have their parents, and their parents may not want to do nothing. So they pretty much have no rights at all in the sense of, unless the rights, but with student government, they could have a meeting with the principal, they could go to school board, they could do more things. And as far as even within a bourgeois context, and demand changes or demand their rights, or at least be heard. They have a concern or complaint. I'm just giving an example of how things are set up. So there is no power. So the American system is not set up for it. That's why it needs to be overturned. That's why, because the people don't have any say in anything.
It seems like everything has to be transformed by,
Right.
and the only agency that can actually do that is a constituent assembly, in which American civil society, gets itself organized and delegated, so that such representatives can come together, independently of any political party, and remake the country into civilian controlled and not into a.
It has to change. It has. We're seeing now something has to change because the way it's set up now, you can't win using the system.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you might get a reform here or there. I'm not saying we did have laws passed, but those civil rights laws came because people organized to fight back and they forced the government to change. But right now, it's a period where the government, Trump backs off. Trump backs off when China says, "Okay, you want to sanction me? Fine, I'll just hold my raw materials and not sell to you." Oh, hey, Trump had to change, right?
Mm.
They had something, but see, right now the American population has nothing like that.
Uh-huh.
So somebody has to come up with some different ideas to organize these assemblies, and then what will they do with the assembly power, and how will they gain traction politically and economically and socially, so they're respected as real centers of the people's will. That's what we have to have those kind of conversations. We're
Yeah.
seeing now Trump can do anything he wants
Yeah.
using emergency powers, and it has to be taken away from him, from the government, because we've seen how it's being abused.
What worries me is that, I see a lot of the opposition abstaining, from doing anything, because they say that electoral process is corrupted. Well, yeah, it is corrupted and gerrymandered, for the electoral districts, so that their party gets into office, and that both of those parties, do that. But there are independent candidates now. There is, like the independent candidates, associated with the Democratic Socialists of America. There's also independent candidates, who are independent of any sort of political formation, who can be backed up. And then they can even, sort of back up some of the Democrats like AOC, like if they don't want the alternative. But what are they doing? I don't see they're doing very much, so that's what worries me about all of this. And certainly, the labor movement is is not around, to help out. Another point that I wanted sort of, to bring up to you, Steve, is that, this National Guard that they're setting up with their military bases around the Black cities. Well, this is exactly the same thing that is being done, in the West Bank of Palestine, Palestine East. And the Deputy Minister of Defense, Ben Gvir, was given the power to create a National Guard of colonists, in the West Bank that he hands out, these, automatic weapons to, and then they go around, using them, to do whatever they want, to intimidate the Palestinian peasantry so that they leave their land and go into the cities and become concentrated into ghettos under the control of the entrances and exits, of each of those cities, which I've experienced myself and I've seen it. And, like in Awara, the entranceway to the city of Nablus, a major city there in the West Bank in the mountains up in the north of the West Bank, there, like people, if the military decides to shut down the checkpoint of Awara, well, they can either go out, the back door, which can also be shut down, or they can, find some sort of, like old road, going meandering through the mountains, to get out in which I've experienced as well, when we took those roads in order to get down to a demonstration in the Jordan Valley, when we're there to, oppose the occupation and the colonization of the Jordan Valley there, which is the major part, the most fertile part of the West Bank. So this is, like the Palestine model is being applied to the United States of America now, and in particular against the minority population, the Black nation, the Mexican population, now even the Japanese American population is being targeted. So this is, what I see happening there.
Thank you for that analysis. That's very astute, and I think we should we should spread that analysis more. I'd actually like to have a separate show just on that. Because I think you said something that no one is saying, but a friend of mine, an ally of mine, has been warning about this potential occurrence, and it seems to be occurring right now. And what you said is exactly what he's been saying, that the model of Palestine and Gaza and West Bank is going to be applied to Black people. He's been warning about this for years, and now it has started.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, in Palestine, what do I have to report to you on is that Gaza City is under siege now. The Zionist military has not been able to occupy Gaza City until now. They're going to attempt to do so, even though the head of the military there has told the Prime Minister Netanyahu, actually Milovsky, I think his name is, and that it's not possible to overcome the Palestinian resistance, with the military force that the Zionists have available to them. Not only because they don't have the recruits to do so, because more than half of the reserve, military soldiers that have been called up have refused to show up. Plus, the Orthodox have refused to be conscripted into the military as well. They've tried to they have a base of 80,000 of the Orthodox that they want to conscript into the military. So they just put out a call for, they sent out notices to 25,000 of the Orthodox, to be conscripted into the military, to be sent, as cannon fodder into Gaza City, but they've refused. And all of the 80,000 eligible Orthodox, who could have been recruited and conscripted, both men and women, into the military, only about 2,000 have showed up over the years. All the rest refuse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a strong resistance there. Now, that's stronger than what I see the resistance being in the United States of America.
Right. Yeah. Right now, among the troops, I would think there was some fraternization with the National Guard by some organizations, but in general, any resistance is kind of being kept under their chest. I've heard stories of people, of troops, Army troops or National Guard troops, having little hush-hush conversation with store owners about how they don't want to be here, etc. But right now, there's no draft here. So among the active military, or active National Guard, we have not yet seen any resistance. Openly, there could be occurring, but we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it yet, no.
What is the story about conscription in the United States? Surely Trump wants to bring about conscription.
Well, it's not happening yet. Well, I mean, it hasn't happened yet. Well, the concern is, okay, the concern is that the people who would be conscripted don't want to do it, and they're out of shape. Because if you go to an average American high school now, students don't have to run in PE. They can, I mean, they do it, but they don't have to engage in rigorous physical exercise. No, they don't. They refuse. They walk the track. They don't run. They don't dress out for physical education. No, they don't. In some schools they do, but in some schools they don't. So the fitness level of the American youth I don't know about Puerto Rico. I don't know about Guam. I don't know about Virgin Islands. I don't know if it's a little different there. In general, the concern has been that they're out of shape. One, and two, that they don't that they're not interested in being in armed forces. So that's one of the problems. That's one of the no one talks about it the way I'm talking about it. But I just saw a picture of an army training a few days ago, and I'm not dissing anybody. But the army sergeant had a big belly. I'm Maybe he has diabetes and he can't control his belly. Okay, that can be that can be the case. But he was kind of a big guy. Okay, he wasn't like lean, mean fighting machine. So I think that's one of the problems that maybe they'll find maybe they'll come up with some new law to require the draft, but it's going to be hard because some people they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Military service is not something. Okay, at one time in high schools, they had ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. They have it in some schools still, where some youth are given the idea of being an officer or a soldier in the Army or Marines or Air Force is a good thing. And some high schools still have ROTC. That's about, maybe they have 20, 30 guys, 20, 30 people, 40 people form a battalion. They may do some marching at an event with some fake guns, that kind of thing. That's really about it as far as high school youth, because they have to get you out of high school. And once you're in college, it's a whole different thing. So they have to recruit out of high school. That's what they have to do. Or young people who are within the recruiting age, who are working or maybe are unemployed. And recruiting, I don't know they can't meet their recruiting card. They can't meet their recruiting quotas. They can't meet it. This has been going on in the United States for decades, dude. They cannot meet the recruiting quotas. So there's not enough soldiers, which is why the U.S. farms out the fighting to proxies or use the Air Force and its bombing or economic war to get its way. There's not enough soldiers. What happened, even with Ukraine and Russia, the recruiting efforts there are from the population. United States, they just would. I'm not saying people wouldn't go fight. I'm not saying it would be mass resistance, but far as people wantingly, knowingly being encouraged to be a soldier. There's no advertisements. It's just nothing. So I don't know how they do it myself.
Yeah, that was the big issue, conscription, for the Vietnam anti-war movement. That was the principal reason why there was a Vietnam anti-war movement, because of conscription. Okay,
right.
Well, Nixon, he tried to preserve himself and his administration by canceling conscription.
Right.
And then the anti-war movement went into decline. And then it was, up to the Vietnamese, military resistance that actually took care of the rest of the war there and forced the withdrawal of the American military forces under humiliating conditions, running away and leaving behind, all of their collaborators and translators, et cetera, et cetera. And then those forces, becoming refugees and boat people who sort of escaped, from the revolution and came to the United States as refugees, and they were allowed in, of course, like these are good refugees, not like the Mexicans type thing.
Yeah, very, very astute observation, Abraham. Very astute indeed.
So, but there's one way I think in which Trump could, or whatever comes after Trump, whatever that Republican administration that's going to entrench itself with gerrymandering and voting denials and all that sort of stuff. If there was a rapid rise in unemployment in the United States, which could very well be the case, I think the level of unemployment in the United States has risen from 2.4 to 2.7 right now. And in Canada, I think it's like 6% or something. So what they can do, once the level of unemployment increases, under the economic sort of, warfare that Trump has initiated. Well, what they can do is just, tell the people, well, you can have a job in the military. You just have to sort of, enlist, and then you can get yourself a salary. You can get yourself, some training, which you wouldn't have available anywhere else. And you could get yourself, some supplementary benefits, medical care and GI Bill, for education afterwards if you survive. And then, they'll take care of the social unrest in that way, just pack them into the military and treat them, to the discipline under coercion. And then there wouldn't be available, to become part of any resistance anywhere anyway. So I think this is all sort of, planned for and taken into consideration. So you're under a very difficult condition there, Steve. I think that the United States, Americans are going to be, manipulated to a great extent, and they're not ready for it.
Nope, they're not ready for it at all. Nope, I have to agree with you. I mean, some are, but the broad majority are not.
Yeah. Yeah. So if conscription is reinstituted, then that would be the last, nail in the coffin of resistance there. They wouldn't be able to, and then they could roll in a fascist regime to full bloom, and then the United States would be there, as a Zionist type state, Sparta
Well,
state.
the thing about the conscription, though, the issue with that is that many of the boys and girls, the women and men who will be conscripted are going to be brown and black. And I'm not saying white youth wouldn't be there. No, I'm not saying that. But many are going to be brown and black. And
Yeah,
Trump wants to promote a white army.
yeah,
When he was speaking at Fort Bragg a few months ago, the news came out that a certain type of soldier was to be put in the background. A certain type of soldier. You couldn't be obese. They really didn't want to see any brown and black people. They just want to see white people.
hmm,
So that's going to how he can get around unless he'll say that black and brown you just don't qualify. You'll find some medical rationale to prohibit them or eliminate them from qualification. As the one problem challenge they will have is that they want the army to be mostly white. They're not saying that, but they want to have a white army, and they really can't have a white army.
Well, there's one way they can have a white army. That is, first of all, I think they've started already, because Trump has gotten rid of the black generals there and the,
True.
what is it called? The DEI program.
Yeah, sure have. Yeah.
Okay. So that means that they're setting it up so that, the officers are white and the
Yeah.
soldiers, the infantry, are black and brown. And then they would be, controlled in that manner. And then they can institute conscription. As long as the officers are white, then they can have control over the minority population.
The one thing about the U.S. military, though, that because of how it has developed, it's going to be hard to purge all the black and the Asian and the Latin officers. It's going to be kind of hard to purge them all.
Hmm.
Because basically, in the military, I have to respect you as my officer, whether you're white or black or brown or yellow. I can't disrespect you. I can be thrown in jail. So it's interesting. That's why some black people and some Latin people as well go into ROTC in college.
Hmm.
When they get out, they're in charge. And I'm colonel or lieutenant colonel so and so, and you're gonna follow my orders because I don't care if you hate black people. That's fine. If you're that stupid, you're still carrying out my orders. So
Hmm.
he'll have to purge a lot of people because there are a lot of people in the military who are people of color who are leading the troops or leading the division or like when there was a shooting at an army base this week, and the head of the base was black. I mean, he was a black man. He had a base, and
Can you go
he's
over
in
that
Florida.
again? What is this incident of a shooting that you referred to? This is very
Yeah,
important.
yeah. There was a mass shooting at a military base in Georgia. It seemed like I know the person who they're accusing of being the combatant, the gunman was black. The head of the base is black. I don't know who the victims were. Yeah, it was a mass shooting in a U.S. military base. Tuesday. There's been a lot of shootings this week, as a matter of fact. A lot of shootings in the United States this week, um, in public places, on college campuses, not in public schools necessarily, K-12, but in U.S. military base. Yeah, and with the point I was making is it's going to be harder to purge all the blacks. He might purge some generals or all the Mexicans or the Latins. But there are a lot who are officers who came to ROTC, U.S. military schools,
Mm,
and he can't just get rid of them. He
mm,
can't. He just can't get rid of them. And they're one of the few. Unfortunately, they're one of the few places where disrespect based on race just isn't allowed.
mm,
I'm the officer. You're the soldier. You'll do
mm,
what I say to do.
mm,
That's it. If you disobey, you're gonna go to the brig and be kicked out.
mm,
I mean, it's just it's interesting. That's why some people go into the military. They know how the society is so racist, and you have an employee who's white or doesn't like black people, or a Mexican doesn't like brown. Whatever.
mm,
Racial feelings, and it's one of the places where people have promoted the American equality because the officers are multiracial
mm,
and the orders are carried out. Now there are white supremacists in the military, definitely are. But it's going to be hard for Trump to get rid of that because
mm.
he's going in 3 years. He's gone.
Yeah,
Either whoever he can't be reelected. The law does not allow him to be reelected, so some of his program won't be enacted, and unless Vance or somebody else becomes president, he may not want to do that. He may want to say
surely. Yeah.
he might just leave that alone. That was too much. I had to sit and kiss your ass because you're president, but now I'm president. Fuck you. Because if he keeps this up, he's gonna have a lot of problems. But that's what I'm saying about your comment about the officers.
So
It's
that would
one of the
explain why
places.
they're developing this new military force. In that video that we saw, those soldiers who went there, to the Japanese museum, I didn't see any black guy there.
No, that's the border patrol. That's Homeland Security. That's not U.S. military.
That's why
That's
they're developing that
right,
force.
right. They
That would
really are.
be a
They really
white
are.
strike force,
It is mostly white.
even
It is
against the
mostly white.
military, like it could be like Civil War even.
Yeah, it is. They are mostly white. Border Patrol has always been mostly white and Mexican, unfortunately, and Latin, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is it mostly black, mostly white, and Latin? Unfortunately, Latins. But they recruit them for language and cultural reasons. But yeah, Border Patrol has always been a kind of a white organization. It has been. Yeah, it's been called the anti-Mexican police for decades.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're very true. Very, very good observation, Abraham. Excellent observation. True.
Yeah, I mean, Americans are used to this, but when I look at it, I see, wow, this is, just like in Palestine, this is a fascist strike force. Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is the concern that people aren't seeing. I mean, because it's something I wouldn't say totally different, but something that's been kept in the dark for a long time and only been used against Mexicans or people who are crossing the border. Now they bring them into the cities and you see them. You didn't see them before.
Yeah.
They were they were only in the desert areas, the dry areas near the borders, carrying out whatever they carry out, shooting, and they've even shot across the border into Mexico a few times.
Wow.
Yes, yes. Someone threw a rock at me, so I'm gonna shoot him across the border. Right? Okay.
Yeah, Mexico, with the President Scheinman, a Jewish woman, president of Mexico, she put 80,000 Mexican soldiers on the border there to stop, any incursions from the U.S. military.
Well, and then supposedly Trump or somebody in the U.S. asked them for permission to raid some cartel headquarters, and they said
Oh
no.
yeah, yeah. They declared all these cartels, to be terrorist organizations.
Well,
And now they pass another law in which they have the right to bomb them, because of what they're designated as.
Oh, the thing here, but you mentioned something again, Abraham. Declarations. I'm just going to declare you. You have no way of refuting my declaration. There's no court you can go to and say, I'm not a terrorist organization. I just sell drugs. I sell drugs, I'm not a terrorist. There's no place you can go. Just like these executive orders and emergency orders, the same kind of thing. The rule by decree. Now, I'm not saying Congress wouldn't back them up. They probably would.
Yeah.
But I do think that U.S. troops might already be in Mexico. But it'd be hard to beat this. The problem with U.S. troops being in Mexico is unless they send Latin troops and put on Mexican uniforms and do a recon behind enemy lines, they're going to stand out like a sore thumb. I mean, or somebody in the Mexican military has to turn their head when the U.S. helicopters come in. So the issue is, when they raid, will they shoot them down? That's and Mexico has to shoot them down.
Yeah.
If they don't shoot them down, if you let them come in and raid and leave, it's just going to destroy any sense of, because one of the lines in the Mexican national anthem, every son is a soldier. Is one of the lines. Every boy is a soldier, first of all. And if, say, you were to invade our land, we have to do something to you, kind of like the French national anthem. So the whole patriotism of Mexico is based on sovereignty of the country. It's in the national anthem. So that doesn't mean anything per se, but it does mean something per se, and as far as the country's ethos and how they do stuff. So they'd have to shoot them unless Shyama says don't shoot them, let them raid and we'll go to the UN or something. She might say that.
UN, yeah, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. Go to some agency to protest it. They have to shoot down. They have to shoot down the U.S. They have to kill the U.S. troops. And then, will they do that? We'll see when it happens. We'll see. I do think it will happen. We'll see what Mexico will do.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll take the position of self-defense.
That reminds me of the Irish Prime Minister who has called for a military intervention into Gaza to save the Palestinians from the occupation.
Yep. Well, at a certain point you wonder, well, I'm gonna say you wonder. At a certain point, without some agreement, quote unquote, with the Israeli United States, what other viable option is that a viable option? First of all, is it viable? I mean, is it viable? Who would carry it out? Where would they carry out their strikes from? What would they do? Under what authority would they do besides humanitarian authority? And what will be the political outcome for the government that does that? Because there would be some political fallout for them, economic fallout.
Yeah.
And I don't see right now the regional government, quote unquote, should be doing it because it's in their region, but they're not. I mean, they should be, because that's where you live. So you would think, well, what's Jordan? What Jordan's bought off Lebanon. Oh, anyway, Lebanon is looking pretty bad. Lebanon's not going to do it. Jordan's not going to do it. Syria has asked Russia to step in. Interesting. They've asked them to re-establish military patrols in some part of the country. And we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say who exactly regionally would do it? No one, I think. I mean, looking at it, let's say they're all were bourgeois governments without U.S. intervention. They were sovereign. Who would do it? Nobody I know of would even dare.
Yeah.
They'd be scared what Israel would do to them militarily.
Yeah.
And also economically. So I think it would have to come from Europe, or Russia could do it because they have a base in Syria. They can launch the strikes right there. They have bases in Libya. They could launch it from Libya and from Syria and from the Gulf. Russia or whoever wants to do it can use those facilities. I said this before. They can use those facilities as a staging ground.
Yeah. Poor Libya. Really.
Libya. Yeah.
I was very involved with the Jamaria there.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the necessary popular support. They only had the popular support of their own sort of beneficiaries who benefited, from the Libyan Revolution of 1969. But the others, they didn't get, a stake in the revolution, and so they supported the opposition. And then,
look at where they are now. Look at where they are now.
yeah, this is like this point, in history. This is like a historical turning point that reminds me of just before the Second World War. When there was a civil war in Spain,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of individuals, independent support, for the Spanish Revolution, because the military did carry off, a coup d'état against the democratically elected, socialist government of Spain. But the opposition was divided, sectarian, fighting with each other, and they ended up, letting the fascists come in, and they allowed, the Nazi Germany to supply the military, Spanish military, with whatever they needed. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, hands off, because we don't want to provoke the West. We want, the West to be an ally against the future Nazi attack that was expected, and, so then they lost out there. That means that the fascists, were emboldened. And meanwhile, the Nazi Germany was, building up its strength, while they had a pact with the USSR not to attack the USSR in preparation in order to attack the USSR, which was their whole sort of, purpose. And then, USSR was thinking, that, the Nazis, would end up, fighting against the capitalist regimes in France and Britain. And when they did, the French bourgeoisie, capitulated, and formed a de facto alliance with the Nazi occupation of France that they didn't mind very much, with. And then Britain, Chamberlain, he also, gave, a free pass, to the Nazi regime to occupy Sudetenland. And they didn't do anything, to try to stop them either. And then on top of it all, the Zionists, had a deal, with the Nazis to get their own members, out of Germany and Hungary. And they let them getting away with, the mass murder of, the Jewish people of Europe, the Ashkenazim, because they weren't Zionists, like my family. And then what happened? And then the Warsaw Ghetto, starved to death, crushed, and in isolation, the Warsaw Ghetto of 1943, of the Jewish partisans in the Warsaw Ghetto, they weren't supported, by corresponding insurrection of the Polish military, the Polish underground, that would have attacked the Nazi regime, occupation of Poland. No, they didn't. They just let, the Jewish, resistance, be crushed after, a bloody big fight, but nonetheless, they got crushed. And then that was it, There's the only thing left, to stop the Nazi regime was the Red Army, which finally got mobilized, after it was demobilized by the regime there, that dismissed its general staff because they were supposedly in conspiracy against the big leader there. So, are we facing the same situation, as the time of the Spanish Civil War when we were defeated? If we get defeated, in a similar sort of, condition, then there's nothing to stop, the fascist regime, from advancing everywhere. However, we have two test cases here, like the Spanish Civil War. One, Palestine, resistance is enduring. And two, in Ukraine, where the advance of the Nazi-led, Ukrainian army into the Russian-speaking, provinces of Eastern Ukraine has been repulsed since 1924. When the militia was fighting there all alone at first against the occupation of their territories by the nation state, that was established, in Kiev. Well, they got the support, from what used to be the Red Army and what still is the Red Army. They still use the same logo, the same star. And I even saw some tanks carrying, the USSR flag on it, when they were moving in there, to push back the occupation of the Russian provinces of Donetsk, Lugansk, and the other one, I forget the name of it. Starts with a K. Kherson, yeah. So those are all, sites, in which there were big battles, with the Nazis during the Second World War. And Kursk was another one, when they repulsed, the invasion of the Russian territory in the Kursk region. In the Second World War, Kursk is where the Nazi army was stopped. The biggest tank battle in all of human history, There was, and the Nazis had like 1 million soldiers there, and the Red Army had 1.5 million. And there was like, thousands, of tanks, on either side. And they fought it out, and the Nazis lost. Wow. That was a turning point in history. Are we going to have a turning point like that somewhere, somehow?
We need one right away.
It seems so. It seems so in Ukraine. And, and Putin, in Alaska, just recently meeting up Trump yesterday, has refused to withdraw from the territories that have been liberated.
Oh, I mean, I don't even, okay. The only way you could, not you, but the only way you can justify even asking such an ignorant question is to ignore what's happened in the war.
Yeah.
You have, whether you like the elections or not, you had an election in which we won twice, one under Ukrainian rule, one under liberated Russian territory. We want to be our own shit, either an independent government or part of Russia. So if you even ask for those areas to remain Ukrainian, you're kind of like, wait a minute, what's happened since this time? I mean, the conversation about, oh, the land, dude, that's over with. If Putin were to give this up, I'm telling you, they'd overthrow his government. The military may overthrow his government. They've lost so many soldiers. They lost a lot of soldiers too, okay? They don't talk about it. They lost some soldiers. At least 10,000, 20,000 people died. At least, maybe more. He can't, if he wants his government to survive, if they were to give up that land, I'm telling you, the people in those areas will revolt against Putin. Yes, they would. The people in Donbass and Lugansk and Zaporozhye and Kherson who lost tens of thousands of their own, because they had their own militia before Russia came to help them. They had their own armies.
Yeah.
They had their own armies fighting Ukraine. They weren't waiting for Russia to fight. So if he were to give them up, it's over. At least they would probably be justified to declare independence. Yes, they would. Because that would be a stab in the back. And he better not do it. He knows he better not do it. That would be, and any Russian army coming to fight them would be crushed. Because people would turn against him. Yes, they would. They have to.
Yeah.
Because they called for him for 7 years. They didn't do anything. Though they may send some money and some troops, but I'm saying actually putting their foot down and said, no, we ain't tolerating this more. We're gonna go in and defend them. They didn't do that. They had Minsk 1, Minsk 2, Minsk 2.5, and that was just helping Ukrainians. So believe me, he can't give that land up politically. If he does, it's over for them in those regions. They will have to fight against Russia, and they would win because they have all the minerals, they have all the mines and all the natural resources. They have a lot of natural resources. They could have their own country. Yes, they could. They're running it anyway. They've been running it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's no one talks about it like that. But I just want to say that he cannot negotiate that away. If he does, he's over there. Russian people may vote him out because their sons have died too.
Yeah.
Right. They can't give up too much because the people have died. They've died.
Yeah.
Even though he's paying them good. They're paying them good money. Being in the army, but no. If people put their life out, stick their neck out, and they don't have to be. There's no. They don't have to. I guess there is some conscription. No, that is not an option. I don't ever speak about this publicly. If he dares to think about it, he's over. At least in that part of the Novorossiya area, they will fight against the Russian government, and they will win because the people will say, "What's going on here? You're stabbing us in the back."
Yeah.
How could they come under Ukrainian control again? Can you imagine the bloodbath?
Yeah.
Oh, and in Crimea, it'll be a bloodbath.
Yeah. And even the Putin elitist government, of Russia, they know that they have no other choice, but to resist because, one, NATO had promised not to expand up to the borders of Russia. They did. In Poland, there are NATO intermediate range missiles with nuclear warheads ready to reach into Moscow.
Anytime.
And then there's the precedent of, the deal that the Stalin regime made, with the Nazis, which was supposed to forestall an invasion of Russia, but didn't. The Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, in which, Nazi Germany, built up its forces with massive investments, of the European bourgeoisie. And, and it wasn't used against, like Britain and France. No, it was used against Russia. Russia was the target. So Russia knows that they're being targeted. They have no other choice, but to resist at this moment and not allow the Ukraine, to build up its military in order to carry out, a full-scale invasion of Russia itself and breaking it up into subordinate, nationalities, which would be controlled, one after the other, by NATO and the United States.
Right, and that's who controls it.
So it seems like Trump has realized, that they can't get away with this. They've abandoned Europe, to do this on their own. And Europe, wants to gear up for war. They want, 5%, of every budget of every country, to be allocated, for military armament, because they've just depleted their military armament. But
also, remember what Boris Johnson said about half a year ago, maybe a year ago, to the European leaders. They said, make your population like the people of the United States. He said this. They don't have good health care. They have very few vacations. So they know what's going on. That Boris Johnson said this. Americans don't know Boris Johnson said it. Wow, I guess we're a bunch of saps. We have no vacations, very, very few vacations, and no sick leave policies. That's how they're able to get away with that 5% thing, by imposing the same austerity on their population that are imposed on America.
That's the only way they can get a 5% military, budget, by clawing back the social services, to the general population.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens, If they want to provoke a social revolution, okay.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Really?
That's fine with me. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Good talk. Okay, so let's get this out, for people to hear.
And tell everybody, our viewers, please like and share. Send your comments.
Yeah.
We need to hear from you.
Yeah. So we're getting a fair bit of attention, on platforms such as TikTok and Reddit, and we should get it out onto some other platforms, because on YouTube, we're getting sort of minimal attention. But that's a different generation of people, TikTok and Reddit, are the younger generations that are paying attention to what we have to say here. And what we have to say here is the accumulation of a certain body of experience, Between the two of us, we've got about 100 years of experience, to put forward here.
Right. And I'm hoping that experience can be useful as future and current activists and revolutionaries step up.
Yeah.
And there have been revolutions, everybody, where the experience wasn't listened to. It wasn't listened to. I can tell you, in the Black community, a lot of problems could have been eliminated in the Black, not the civil rights movement, the Black movement, if some experience with civil rights had been listened to. It wasn't listened to.
Yeah.
If you have to listen and learn, it's just smart. Just be smart. That's all.
And we've also got not only the years of experience, but we've got the backgrounds of experience from both the Black resistance of the Black Panther Party and all of the struggles that have taken place, since then, like the Black Lives Matter movement for George Floyd, etc. And we have the historical experience of the Jewish Bund, which was, the mass movement of the Jewish working class of Europe that was the first to resist against the fascist encroachments into the Eastern Europe. Okay? And we lost. Okay. We lost most of our members, and the Zionists took over control of the Jewish people. Yeah, we know that. But the example and the legacy of having stopped the fascist, takeover of Europe is enduring and cannot be reversed.
That's right. It can't be. Right.
Right on.
Okay.
So here we are, and we continue.
Here now.
Very good. Okay. Thanking you, Steve. That was Steve Struggle speaking. And this is Dr. Ibrahim Weisfeld, a political scientist, speaking as well. Yeah, there's the experience of that too, So we've got it.
This presentation will now end with a video from Dr. Weisfeld's channel, which he will first publish to his channel on the date of September 30th, 2012. Free Palestine, we must never let you die.
To quote Israeli historian and internationally recognized expert on fascism, Ziv Sternhell, contrary to the claim that is often made, Zionism was not blind to the presence of Arabs in Palestine. If Zionist intellectuals and leaders ignored the Arab dilemma, it was chiefly because they knew that this problem had no solution within the Zionist way of thinking. In general, both sides understood each other well and knew that the implementation of Zionism could only be at the expense of the Palestinian Arabs. Hunger strike is therefore the only non-violent method of resistance open to prisoners whose sole demand is that their human rights are respected in accordance with international law.
I think that all the world had seen what happened in Palestine last month and before last month in September and in October. What happened for the prisoners, because they began open hunger strike in the date of 27th September 2011. Why the prisoners began their open hunger strike? Because they want to tell the administrative prisons that they are want to be to live as war prisoners.
The Zionist movement could only choose between two strategic options to achieve its goal of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. What Benny Morris has labelled the way of South Africa, i.e. the establishment of an apartheid state, with a settler minority lording it over a large, exploited native majority. Or the way of transfer, to create a homogeneous Jewish state, or at the least a state with an overwhelming Jewish majority, by moving or transferring all or most of the Arabs out. In order to accomplish the Zionist agenda, a policy of systematically racist, exploitative, repressive and illegal methods has been utilized by the State of Israel. Kader Anan is a baker, shopkeeper, student and father from Araba, near Jenin in the occupied West Bank. He was violently arrested by the Israeli occupying forces in December 2011. He was taken from his home in the middle of the night, during and after which he was subjected to brutal beatings, systematic humiliation and interrogation. He began refusing food immediately after his arrest, launching a hunger strike to protest administrative detention practices and his illegal and indefinite imprisonment. In another well-publicized case, Hannah al-Shalabi spent 2 years in Israeli administrative detention before being freed as part of the Gilad Shalit prisoner swap in 2011. However, she was violently abducted from her home in the occupied West Bank village of Burin and re-arrested in February 2012. Again imprisoned without charge or trial. She began a hunger strike soon after her arrest and went without food for a little over 40 days before being finally offered a deal for her release. The conditions of her release, however, prohibit her from returning to her home for 3 years, in which time she must remain in the occupied Gaza Strip, far from her family, friends, and the familiar surroundings of her childhood.
I'll speak about the prisoner in person, Israeli person, why they refuse to eat anything. You know, we have a big problem for the prisoner inside Israel. Human rights, they send a report about the prisoner. The prisoner feeling like the policeman do it with him like animals. No justice. Some prisoners very sick. Some prisoners have a problem in his heart, in his legs, in his eye. He doesn't send him to the doctor. Only the hospital in person, his name is Al-Ramla Hospital. It's a very bad hospital. It's not good for the animal, nothing more for the prisoner.
There is no example in history, the first Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion once accurately stated, that nations open the gates of its country not because of necessity, but because the nation which wants to come in has explained its desire to do it. This succinct narrative framing of the Israeli occupation of Palestine helps us understand the root cause of the problem that this film seeks to address. Adnan's hunger strike focused international attention on administrative detention and sparked demonstrations across Palestine and the world. Adnan survived the longest hunger strike in Palestinian history, going 66 days with only water and salt, before reaching a deal with his Israeli jailers for release at the end of his 6-month term.
It is very dangerous for them inside the prison to maybe one of the prisoners maybe will die, some of them will be illness, and the media outside, all the media outside with the prisoners. Very important that it is expensive for the director of prisons. It costs them a lot of money to return this meal back and not to take this. And it is a step of struggle inside the prisons. And then when all of them began to join the others, it is very dangerous inside the prison.
Since 1967, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been held without charge under this unjust and illegal system. Qadar Annan and Hannah Shalabi are just 2 such cases, with over 300 Palestinians currently held under administrative detention by the Israeli authorities. Of those currently held, 24 are elected representatives of the Palestinian Legislative Council. One man has been held for over 5 years under this system.
Must the prisoner refuse the food because the prisoner want a freedom, want to live in life freedom. The prisoner is not animals, it's humans, and I give him my hands and told him, still refuse the food to take your dream from the Israeli military to live in peace, to believe in to return back to us, to return back to your wife, to your father, to your mother, to your son.
So the Israeli director or administration in the prisons know that if the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners, began and continue more than 10 days, so they will continue. It is dangerous for them that the prisoners will continue there.